Yeah, I see the meter running. Usually that means the tax man is keeping track. So welcome back, Alan, for another stop through for a Reef Hangout. Sort of impromptu. We tend to do it this way. As you can see behind him is going to be something we're going to talk a little bit about on this live. Um, and I'll let Alan share all the juicy details regarding what y'all are looking at. Some of you already know. Um, I don't have much to offer, but that's a pretty nice pic of a Miyagi I just took behind me. There you go. Um, so anyway, welcome back, Alan. And Alan reached out to me earlier this, I think it was earlier this week. Um, we're all busy, you know. Hey, Yaz and Reef, welcome. In fact, yes, you definitely will be able to join one day for sure. Anybody who wants to join, just hit me up and let me know, and we'll do a live together. But also, I need to get one of you guys out there that follows along that might be interested in modding, so that if we get any noise in the comment section, you can help out with that. But before we get started, so if you have a question for Alan, make sure and put like an A or something to preface it to for this one, and then like a P for me. I suspect most of them will have A's. Alan, my dog is barking, dude. Um,
So my guy's just
so
laying down
yeah,
by
go
my
ahead.
feet. No, I was just gonna say my dog's like right by my feet right now.
My So my little male chihuahua is ornery, man. So he's telling the other one basically come outside, right? And he doesn't want to be out here alone, so he's barking. Coral, just come on out. Bobo, shh.
That's funny.
Chihuahuas, yeah, they got a mind of their own. But so back to the topic. So Alan like hit me up and shot me a message about his pH, and yeah, so we're gonna definitely get into some deeper stuff today. I don't know what the turnout will be, but I know a lot of people go back and watch these, which is totally cool. In fact, there's probably some that might even get inspired to maybe do some data sets based on conversations we've had. Who knows? But I can say this: I always enjoy having Alan by. I've prepared to my best to be as cognizant and as focused as I can and clear-minded. If my dog will just cooperate, that would be awesome. Bobo, please. I'll do the old TREAT thing next, but I'm gonna wait. So pH, I think, would be a good starting point. I know that um, I have a hunch, but I'll let you give me your anecdotal hunch why you're able to run a calcium reactor, uh, not add any pH in a bottle solutions or any other um, air influencers of any sort, and are able to achieve a very, very high number during your peak photo period. But I told him my response back was, yeah, but I'm more interested in understanding how that 8.3 exists during your low. And I thought that was quite remarkable as well and worth discussion. So if you want to just go ahead and maybe share your anecdotes on that. What your thoughts are, perhaps. Like, what are you thinking on that?
Yeah, so it's been about 3 months now since I've got my first Aqua Wiz set up on my system. So I guess the experiment's been running for about 3 months at this point. It was all kind of interested from there. Let me see. Let me just put my headsets in. Can you hear me?
I think I can hear you. Are you there?
Okay. Yeah. Just want to
Yeah. Okay,
make
you're
sure
there.
I'm audible. Um, but yeah, so it's been about. I think I got the Aqua Wiz early. Let's see. I got it January 8th, January 7th ish. So we can say like beginning of January is when I got kind of curious about what the device could do and what I could perhaps like unveil in my own system. At first, pH kind of trended within what I thought it would be, given that I ran a pretty large calcium reactor. Started around like 8 to 8.3. That's pretty typical, I'd say. And then afterwards I got a little curious because everyone's always a big proponent of, oh, you get your pH up, things are going to do better, things like that.
Hmm.
So I wanted to see, at what extent were those statements kind of true, and if I could kind of overcome them without, you know, adding, major modifications to the system to begin with. So that kind of got me thinking. It got me thinking about like the drivers of pH and the other factors that influence it in general. And
Hmm.
everyone typically notes like, oh, I have a high pH during the day, and I have a low pH, or my low of pH is at night. And that kind of made
Hmm.
sense to me since pH is essentially a measure of it's a relationship between carbon dioxide, the carbonates in the water, etc. And that it's kind of clicked to me, given the amount of coral that you're growing, all these photosynthetic organisms that are essentially consuming the carbon dioxide and buffering the water. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Um, what if I use my corals to manipulate pH? So I was like, oh, let's kind of dive into that and let's see how far I could take it. And yeah, so far it seems like my hunch has been kind of on the money. Like as of late, I've been able to accomplish a pH range of like 8.4 to 8.7 throughout the day now, instead of that original 8.0 and 8.3. Um, so yeah, someone Yazin said, yeah, open your windows and feed at night. Uh, Not quite, but I can kind of see that. So I'll get into the feeding part after, but definitely opening the windows and um, you know introducing more fresh air into the house is definitely beneficial in maintaining or stabilizing pH, depending on your local air quality. Especially during the spring here, not too sure how much I want the windows open, given that it's going to be pollen season soon. Trying to mitigate that from entering the system. But yeah, I found a few pretty interesting insights in my system. So around this time too, I stopped using kalkwasser, and I primarily relied on my calcium reactor for mineral supplementation. Everyone's always, harping on kalkwasser being great. Well, it is great, but it also has its, drawbacks that I found to be more of a detriment, especially in a high demand system. So I backed off of kalkwasser, relied primarily on my calcium reactor, and I was expecting to see my pH go down, but in reality, from what I'm seeing here, is that it's been drifting upwards slowly. Well, this is also paired with a few other changes that I've employed on the system as well. Drastically increasing the light, and also different feeding strategies to accommodate that. And as a result, I've just seen pretty large explosion in growth when done correctly here, because all these things have to be in relation to each other, especially when you start moving one of these other levers. The other levers have to also go up or down accordingly. So I recently measured the par in my system too, because it's been probably a few years since I've last measured it. Because I'd had my lighting schedule a specific way for I don't know how long now. And then I measured the par recently. And do you want to guess how much the corals are getting, Perry? Or did I already say?
Um, for you to be able to have pH at that level, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna shoot pretty high. I'm gonna go for probably in the neighborhood of 800 par.
Yeah, so most of the colonies receive about 700 par. Some of the
Hmm.
ones, like the jaw dropper behind me here, it's receiving about 1,000.
Hmm.
So I
Easy.
was just like, yeah, and I was just like, wow, that just is crazy for like people typically consider these corals as like smooth skins and not being able to receive or tolerate a lot of light. and that just kind of blew my mind. Because I'm running the radions now pretty much at 100% for 12 hours straight, followed by a 4-hour ramp period going down. So the whole entire photo period is about 16 hours start to end.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm essentially replicating, uh, the peak. Hey, what's up, Rich? But yeah, I'm essentially replicating, summertime, and going along with this and what happens during the summer. You're going to get a bloom, and all the other microfauna
Mhm.
and all the other natural food that would be blooming at the same time. And this is kind of going into conjunction with the energy input into the system, right? Because all of these corals, they're essentially kind of like batteries, kind of harvesting the energy input into the system, either through the light or the things that grow and that they consume subsequent. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe that I'm getting 1,000 par at some of these corals. And the thing is, like, they're growing into 1,000 par. So they're going to be receiving, upwards to like 1,000 plus as they grow vertically. And there's no burnt tips, there's no lightening of the colors. Uh, and I was just pretty astonished. And then come to hear this, like a good friend of mine, he noted that out in like the coral flats where a lot of these corals come from or farmed out in the wild in the ocean, they're only growing like 2 meters deep, and getting baked under the sun over there in like Indonesia. And he had measured the par, and that they were getting upwards to 2,000 par. So I was just like, wow, that's just mind boggling. And then when you receive these corals fresh from the wild, like the colors are amazing, like the even under like the sun, you're getting the fluorescence and these pinks and these blues that are just like eye shattering. And you're like, "How, why can't I have this in my reef tank to begin with?" Well, going back to this, a lot of that is due to the fact that the corals aren't getting the proper nutrition to rebuild, right? Imagine you going out in the sun, toiling for like an entire day. If you don't go
Mhm.
back in at least have like a cup of water, you're I don't know how many more days of work you can do out there under the sun. Your body's expecting a full meal to build and repair itself at night. And all of that, applies to our corals as well. You give them 12 hours of, sun basking, and you don't feed them, you can say goodbye to them in a few weeks. But in conjunction with my strategies and whatnot, I've seemed to, those issues seem to be a thing in the past, right? And with
Mhm.
this, as the corals are growing, you're essentially creating more surface area that can photosynthesize, right? And that's why I've been noticing in my tank, like the pH is trending up for a reason. It's not like I've changed the energy input into the system, but I have changed the efficiency of harvesting that energy, right? You more corals to photosynthesize from that light, more oxygen going into the tank, driving
Less
pH
water
up.
volume,
Yeah.
less water
That's
volume
what.
offset by more coral mass, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
It
then
all it's all playing a role in what you're doing is it's essentially a living filter at this point. I mean, it's it's able to sustain like me right now, like you said, working in the I can do it right now, but I'm tan. You just saw earlier. I'm in the light all day long. I'd love to
mhm,
talk about light. They can definitely handle it. And it's neat because you're proven sort of like botany type of response and studies and a lot of conversations I've listened to regarding how much light, how long, how long can they sustain, and I believe you're 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 mediating carbonic acid, and that is Huh. I think if you're gonna have a holy grail in reefing, where you can get to a place, that's close to it because now you're running your system without any drift, and you're literally have very hardly no drift because the carbonic acid isn't able to influence the nighttime suppression. And so
Hmm.
you because it's being sequestered real time. I mean, I'm more interested in understanding more the how. I guess is like is it a light dark mechanism that's like fueling one's fueling the other and symbionts because like everything, man, you can take it all the way to the edge, but there's got to be something that's able to counterbalance that equally. Like there has to be an exchange, right? And so that's
Yeah.
more the
Hmm.
mechanism I'm trying to wrap my mind around because you're literally only a point 0.4 drift with 8.7 as your peak, and you're using a calcium reactor, and you're not using any kalkwasser, which most people would be like,
Yeah.
I'm
It
blown
sounds
away.
unheard
Like
of, right? Yeah.
it's
Unheard
not
of,
something
right?
you typically hear about, but I think when we talk about the coral behind your head, I told you the other day, you sent me a text of it, and that's one of my most favorite corals. That's the RRC OG jaw dropper Tim Herman Thurman lineage. So it carries some heavy weight as far as acroporas. Anybody who's in the kind of wanting to understand lineage and really knowing history and stuff. It's amazing coral, but what I told Allan was that I've never seen this growth structure on this
Right.
coral, and we all know it's probably a Malaysian deep water of a sort. That's not really the mystery. It's always more had a more elongated, more stretchy orientation from my time seeing it. With the internode spacing being really
Yeah.
elongated, whereas you've got it
Hmm.
really clustered and tight. And I'm like, dude, I gotta pardon my language. I'm fucking blown away. Um,
Yeah. I
I
was.
can't even tell you how in awe I am with that coral right there because I've kept it and I've kept that lineage. I've had two cuts of that lineage, and I thought I was a good reefer until I got that coral, and it taught me a lot
Yeah.
about reefing.
Oh yeah. Like I was like referring back to my previous grow outs too, and it was exactly like what you had, stated, Perry. Like I was looking at it because I've grown it out probably like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. I had a pretty sizable piece, and the growth structure was completely different. Like the polyp density on this newer grow out that I've been keeping, it's it's crazy. It's the amount of polyps per the surface area here.
And
It's like double,
just
tripled. Yeah,
yeah,
and
I'm
not
blown away because usually in okay, so I'm assuming that one branch there, it's a V branching look
yeah,
right there on
right here.
that main cola right there. On that V right there, I'm imagining that's what, an inch on either one of those two, maybe a little more.
Yeah, like the entire branch is probably about an inch.
See, and normally you would only have one on the axial correlite, and then you'd be lucky to have another shoot, even I don't know, maybe even a couple of millimeters down. So even in that space, you have like probably 10 times the amount of branches typically I've seen in that space and that coral, like literally, which means you have 10 more feeder polyps from the axial
Hmm.
correlite because that one doesn't have any other correlites that I've seen. It only has the main ones coming out of the top, right?
Yeah, like let me see if I can find the
It doesn't
picture
have
here.
any side polyps, is what I'm saying, right?
No, it's let me pull up the picture. Switch my camera around here. Boop. So this is what it looked like original or like back in the day when I was growing it out. Right. You can see how sparse it is compared
Right.
to I'll scroll up here to the other picture on Reef to Reef. And maybe if I can have both of them within frame. Right. Like
Yeah.
so, this branch is probably equivalent to that branch right there. And you're just looking at the amount of the density difference. granted, I was running, these systems completely different back then, but it just goes to show you what a change in methodology of different husbandry approaches can do to transform a coral, right? It like this section right here, like just count. It's crazy, and like
Yeah, I
not
mean,
not
it's
only just not only just that, but like the polyp extension too.
so its survivability is heightened, and the bigger it gets, the more like it gets, which means too, the biggest thing will be like if you cut it in the future and pass it to a buyer, they're gonna have to keep the similar pace. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, I mean that very respectfully. But it is, man, it's something to behold, and I know I do that often, but wow, I mean, it's, that's something to really behold, in that particular piece. So, brilliant. You've almost changed the way that coral is orientating within the confines of the aquarium. I would imagine it looks like that in the wild. I would imagine it probably looks like structurally. Um,
Y- Yeah, like even if you refer back to the original import picture, it doesn't even actually kinda. I mean, the let me pull up a picture here from, that original picture that I got everyone, ogling over it. But it's I still don't think it's as dense as what I've able to achieve now, because nature is not ideal in any respect. Let me
Yeah,
see
but
here.
typically, if it's gonna survive, it's gonna do its thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
So I
this
mean, it does have a little bit tighter, but it depends on the water where it's at, like how turbulent it is too. But
Yeah, like here's that other, like maybe an example. So it's definitely, you know, right when it was first imported, the structure of it was definitely a bit more tight, like growing wise. Like I think this is like a picture of, oh, that's a tiny one. But
yeah, so that's Tim's, and you can see his looks more thickety, more like,
it
yeah, like a, what you call it, not a bird, like, maybe bird nesty type of, uh structure to it. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah, like I mean just like referring to other people's examples of it online, it's just, they almost look like two different corals. I even sent it like here, like this is more like more so like a
yeah,
classic
that's what
example.
I've had mine. That's what mine looked like. No, what this is, it's a tell. It's a tell. Okay, so it's to me, it's a tell. You can see it's trying to do that in the bottom, middle part of the bottom right, like it's trying to node up and get
Hmm.
that top cola like that you have. It's trying.
Hmm.
Do I remember
Yeah,
all the negative comments on Reef Central with that OG red saturated photo? I do, but here's the thing, Rich. I can tell you that if you've probably had it, I'm sure you have. You've have everything. You got the most insane collection, but the jaw dropper, when you have the Thurman one that I had, there is nothing, and I'm telling you, there is no coral that I've been able to put under white or blue that could even come close to looking like this coral. And that's not even achieving what Allan was achieving. Um, it is, um, it is every bit of what it's worth. When I got mine frag from Tim, I sent back a message. I said it's worth every freaking penny, dude. It is the most glowy,
it's it's
showy.
spectacular. Yeah.
It's worth any, if you ever, like, Rich, if you don't have it and you can access that particular strain, get it, just because, or lineage, I should say, because it really is just, to me, it was a testament of skill too. Like, in order to keep it alive, I think is one thing, but to take it to this, where Allan's, bringing it to, and then that kind of goes back and dovetails right back into the pH, and that probably, um, this is all interrelated to coral feeding response to coral feeding response, and it's a timing mechanism. And somehow you're able to, like, one's breathing while one's inhaling while one's exhaling, and it's a perfect,
Right.
like
Yeah,
a
and that's
perfect in and out.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
so
like a perfect in and out breath.
to go back on that, Perry, breathing is a great analogy for this, right? Because how I run the system now is I've essentially fasted for 12 hours, right?
Mhm.
During that peak, that 12-hour of peak lighting, I don't feed the system. I have anthias, wrasses, tangs, all of those fish that you would commonly hear that, oh, they need to be fed hourly. I don't have to do that. The system is breeding, right? I have stocked the system with enough inverts, which routinely spawn, like a lot of shrimp, a lot of crabs, snails. Those things spawn. The fish are eating it.
I
The
see what's going
copepods.
on here. So
You,
you're feeding towards the tail end of your photosynthetic period. So
hmm
when you're when your core, so what's happening is when your fish are producing waste, typically that would cause the system to go more acidic. But because it's now serving as a food, your corals are now taking it in, and so that's the breathing mechanism in real time. And so as the lights begin to fade down, right, the corals begin to
yep,
respire, right? I'm
yep,
imagining
yep.
is what's
Yeah, I
going
mean,
on.
it's also evident on the aquawiz in terms of how the trends appear. Because you imagine you're hyperventilating, right? You're not gonna catch your breath at all. And imagine running your tank as you're hyperventilating. Your corals are gonna be stunted. They don't know to grow or to eat or to do anything, right? You need to give them dedicated periods where you are expecting a specific action out of them, right? During that first initial phase of 12 hours, you're forcing the photosynthesis. You are limiting the amount of respiration that the system is conducting, right?
It's closing a loop.
Yeah,
It's
I
closing a
mean,
loop.
100%. Here, I just pulled up the Aquawiz trend. And, this has been the most eye-opening for me because, like, I noticed it, this pattern starting to appear within, like, the first week, and just having that background, with my education, I got really curious of, like, what is this intrinsically telling me? Like, what signals is this data telling me? So let me just, switch the camera around, and we can go look at,
While you're
uh
doing that, um,
right?
never had
So
it. Okay, I got you, Rich. Mhm.
so so you can see here, like, this let me just remove every other signal on here. So this is the daily pH, right? So you're seeing this curve, right? And as it's going up, I mean, if we zoom out and have it in reference with other things, um, you can see how. Let me see. Let me go to the yearly here. You can see how the pH is trending upwards as this strategy has been longer employed, right? In relation to the amount of coral that I'm growing and the more efficient that they become once they adapt to being able to handle all of that light and understanding, and the all the other populations are growing and booming at the same time. You observe this synergistic effect basically. You know, and let me see
You're
here.
piggybacking. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
just
I,
like
I mean,
piggybacking.
right, and then it becomes a lot more apparent, this the paradox of the ocean, right? Like, how can there be so much life yet so little observable nutrient, right? Or just the reefs are considered a desert, but there's so much life. Or not like on land where a desert is completely barren except for a few life forms. You go out to an active reef, which is considered a desert, and it's like the jungle. There's just so
Uh-huh.
much competition. There's so much different life forms out there, all cohabiting in the same space. And I mean, it was just really amazing for me to, employ this strategy on one system
So,
and then
so
observe the
Alan,
other system. Yeah.
while I can think of it, do you think that this is maybe akin to like, okay, like let's say, for example, on the reef during the daytime, perhaps because the way it works is that maybe a larger fish gets taken out, right? And then the smaller fish breaks it down, and then something's eating that, and then something, and it's and the chain of it becoming available for the corals to feed on isn't happening towards the tail end of the day. But meanwhile, they've been getting baked the f out all day long, and so by the time that everything's being literally broken down to a feeding particulate size, maybe that's sort of like you're almost creating a very maybe like a sort of a replication or similar type of experience. I'm wondering if
Yeah.
that is what's going on in the ocean similarly.
I mean, I wouldn't doubt it, Perry. A lot of these things, or a lot of the strategies I employed, was to observe nature and to see how you could apply it in a box, right? Because a lot of these things wouldn't, it's not easy to grow coral. I mean, we can generalize and make it sound as simple as you want it to be, but there's a lot of complex actions that are occurring 24/7, right? And there needs to be specific phases that need to occur in order for the system to be efficient, right? I mean, it's like, imagine you're making a hamburger. You put the cheese down, or like, the ingredients in a different order, and then you bite it, everything just falls out, right? There's a specific way to organize and arrange the system so that when you do take a bite, it stays solid. It doesn't, the patty doesn't slide out and you got to pick it up, or, the cheese is not even melted. Um, and I wouldn't doubt that, there are, analogous things that happen out there in nature, you know, definitely within physics. You observe a lot of these things too. I mean, it's just, how do you translate it from different, fields into a reef tank, right? And then to go along with the feeding response too, it's like what we were saying earlier, they're getting cooked. They're literally getting cooked under the light. It's hot. You stick your hand under the light fixture, I mean, a few minutes and you're like, I got to take it out. But that coral is under that intense lighting for 12, 16 hours. And then, that's increasing its metabolism as well, right? And in order to compensate for, all that, you know, reception of energy, how do you convert it efficiently, right? If you got a huge battery, but your wires going to whatever you're, powering it, are a tiny gauge, it's going to fry, you know? You can't,
Mhm.
you can't use your car battery to charge your phone without the proper insulation, gauge thickness. It's just not going to work. You need to find an efficient energy transfer and an efficient energy harvesting mechanism, right? Because at the end of the day, we're never going to be able to replicate the output of the sun, especially in a home setting, right? But these corals are receiving full sunlight for a lot of the time, and they're capable of it, but we just can't replicate it. And that's always been a question that I've had, like, how can I get closer to what I observe in nature, and, this peak form that I see them come in. And then, in captivity, they just kind of seem to degrade or morph into weird things. And it just, it's almost impossible to replicate what a coral looks like when it just comes in right off the shipment.
You can see it right here. All
Yeah.
day long. That's
Yeah.
my that light, I'm getting lit up by the end of the day sun right now, which is awesome because I love
Hmm.
every bit of it. But yeah, I'm like one of your corals basking in the sun. My journey with gardening opened my eyes to like some of the same type of concepts, and like for example, the using these closed loop mentalities, right? Of I will never go outbound for fertilizer again. I just no minerals, nothing. No, I've got my food forest set, my ground is set. Now it's all about just putting everything back and making sure to just tend everything, be the steward, like the steward to the reef. Well, another thing
Mhm.
I'd noticed is like everything has its purpose. Everything has a role. And when we start opening our eyes to everything has a role, people are putting ammonia, for example, in their tank. Now, those who are doing it, no hate, but if I was going to put ammonia in my tank, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But you know how I would do it? Take a
I gotta
wild guess.
guess, but you know, add some
Go,
fish
say
and
it.
feed them. You
Or
add
I
some
just
fish and feed them.
take a
Yeah.
leak in my own tank. I just piss in it. And and
Yeah.
and no, and people are going to be like, "Oh my god, he just went there." And I'll say, "Yeah, I went there and when this is done, go on YouTube, type in urine as a nitrogen source or a nitrate source for gardening and watch how many videos pop up. You'll be blown away." And it's like
Yeah.
when you realize every little thing has it's all related. It's all the same. Organic is
Mhm.
organic. Nitrate is nitrate. You know. Now, definitely, when we're talking about coral feeding and stuff like that, you definitely they're going to have a preference over the type of phosphate they're receiving or nitrate or whatever they're receiving. But it opened my eyes and it started making me think of like I heard the new thing is the ammonia dose, and I'm like, man, why don't you just take a leak in your tank? You know? No, I know it sounds stupid, but
Most people's
how much
diets
would
are
you
probably not, probably
well,
too suited for that, you know?
this this could possibly be a problem, right? Because but that leads to a broader picture. And one thing I want to talk to you about and dive in today is not only about microclimate, but I want to talk about microclimates within microclimates within microclimates, right? Because I want to get into layers, because that's what I'm like. We talked about pH earlier, right? And talked about air exchange and how that interplays into elevated or a better pH. Well, what about plant life? What about plant life in and around your home? In and around your system, right? What about that exchange? These are things that my mind begins to think about too. Like you, I'm thinking about how do I strategize nature by utilizing nature, right? So if I'm trying to mimic nature, how can I employ nature or something that's naturistic and utilize that as my tool? And that's not how I used to reef, so
Mhm.
it's something worth exploring. There are so many little ways we can boost the pH. Oh my gosh, that's where I wish I had a mod for right there. Oh goodness gracious. Anyway, moving along. I'm not here to talk about someone, this, that, or the other. My goodness. It's a comment about urine as a fertilizer. Go research it. And if you have a problem with it, don't come to the channel. All right. Sorry about that, Alan.
No, I mean, it's all good. I mean, it's all in relation to it. Urine is also going to have, break aminos, peptides, I mean, it's the breakdown of what you're eating too, right? I mean, the fish secrete, they pee in the water, they poo in the water. Your corals are growing from it. So, I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. It's just, the what inputs that organism get, and, like a lot of people, take medicines for different things. I don't know how great that would be to throw into your tank by accident because, your kidneys are filtering everything out to the best of their ability, and then, it's releasing it as a waste product. But, in our case, it's got to be a cleaner waste product, right? And that's why feeding the tank like cleaner inputs, or having different organisms to process whatever you have in the system is important. You know, I think it's
Yeah,
just
I would definitely think
was it
pharmaceutical, depending on your diet, obviously, you know. I mean, we could get into very, very deep discussions about, human anatomy and all of that stuff, but I'll leave that for a different type of conversation because we're not getting into the orientation of the human anatomy today. But one day we will get into it on a live stream, but not this day. But
yeah,
yeah,
but
as we
but
move
like
al
you said, it's all the same. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
and
but
it
like you
is.
said, Perry, it's all one and the same. So you just got to find the right way to connect the dots, 'cause, the dots are there. You just gotta draw the lines in between them.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's always
absolutely.
been really cool for me. And having the ability to run this like two different systems side by side and just implement different tweaks to the strategy. It's been really awesome because each success that I find on one system, I'll apply it to the other, and I'll watch it change over time. Right? First it started off with the feeding, and then after I saw the results from the feeding, it was the application of the light, and then from there reading how the light is impacting the corals. It's what else? What are the next components that we can kind of utilize here to see kind of push the ceiling up, right? So it's pretty cool that way, and being to be able to see that all happen and coincide with each other in real time, just being very observant of the system too. It's very powerful, I would say, just because a lot of this stuff, especially when you read like the white papers and the literature, the conclusions that they arrive at are more so pointed at a very specific study or a specific question that they have, right? And those conclusions can be applied in a lot of different things, right? You can say that medicine, why, or like just kind of like, a lot of the medicines that are going around for weight loss right now, right? Sure, it's great for weight loss, but then what happens to the body? What happens a year from now, right? And to see how that goes, and it's always super fun to play with the reef tank and see what you can apply and learn from it, and then apply to your own life or other things as well.
Well, it gets back to, a lot of the shifts that I've made have coincided with really the takeaway versus the addition. And by doing so, I'm now able to really analyze data. And if I choose to test or whatever I want to do, I can now interpret it without any noise or any interference. And for me, that sort of allows me now to guide things a little bit differently, versus throwing a bunch of things at something, and then I used to do this, man, and then trying to figure out,
Yeah, me
well, it's a
too.
system and it's gonna
Yeah.
work. And I used to believe like that, and I've had success. Like, don't get me wrong, but by clearing the noise, what I've been able to do, I talked to my boy Matt the other day, NSB Reef. If you're out there, what up, dog? Um, I was talking to him the other day, and we were getting into it just about that, man. Exactly on that topic. So yeah, man. There's definitely something to be said for it. Now, to clear the air, Acro Killer, you are welcome to the channel, bro. Like, thank you. I'm honored that you have the time to stop by and be a part of what's going on here. Use love and respect. That's how I do things. You want to come into my personal inbox? Let's go ahead and air it out, and then talk smack to me in my inbox. I already told you what would happen. So let's not do this here. This channel is all about love. My whole life is oriented about that. And I'm not going to allow you to derail or think you're going to derail anything, including this conversation. So please, I'm asking you kindly, let's have a fun spirited conversation. Let's not defend products. No one's bashing products. When we're talking about ammonia, we're not talking about a specific one, are we? Whatever brand you're using or promoting, please understand, no one's making any attacks on any marketing um, uh, corporations or products or anything here. We're just having a conversation regarding our passion and desire for aquapork keeping. Nothing much other than that. Who the hell is okay? So, like, seriously, dude, like, I'm not talking to you that way. Let's move on, shall we? So, Alan, I'm going to act like this gentleman isn't here, and we're going to get back into pH and acropora, back into the graph. So let's bring that back up, and let's talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I mean, I hope that doesn't cloud your mind too much, Perry, but it's pretty interesting, right? Because at a certain point, pH at a too elevated of a level. can also be considered as a dangerous thing. So it's pretty cool. It's the greater the pH, right? You're essentially influencing the rate of precipitation in the tank, right? Higher pH allows the coral to expend less energy to precipitate its coral skeleton from the minerals that are within the salt water. But there's a potentially at a certain point where that rapid precipitation can become harmful, right? Because what we had observed in the past with kalkwasser, and things like that. You pour too much kalkwasser, what happens? You get calc burn or alk burn, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times that was just due to the over mineralization of the coral, right? You're creating too much skeleton, and the coral does not have the capacity to output as much flesh as the skeleton that it has. And that's why, the zooxanthellae can only do so much and provide the coral, right? It's primarily providing sugars. Sugars are not what build protein and muscle and tissue, right? You need those amino acids and those other nitrogenous compounds to actually create the flesh that the coral is going to envelop that skeleton in, right?
Mhm.
And this is where I've spent a lot of resources in stocking up the tank efficiently. Because before, I was always in the mindset of a utilitarian fish. But you know is a goby not a utilitarian fish? It has a purpose. It has a niche that it
Mhm.
occupies. And then when you start questioning these people, "Oh, I just have tangs and wrasses," which was, the mindset that I had before, you were really missing out on a lot of potential, benefits from all these other fish that you could potentially stock your tank with. Because it's cool, but, like, you can't really have 10 tangs and a 100 something gallons of water. Eventually they get big. Tangs get up to like a foot. And once they get cramped, they get stressed, and then they pass, and you just feel bad. So in reality, you could have, you know, 30, 40, 50 fish in a 100-gallon tank, but they have to be the right fish, and you have to create those niches for them to exist in. So lately, I've been, acquiring fish like cardinals, anthias, a lot of like different planktivores, because I'm stocking the tank with a lot of inverts. And since they spawn, why let those, you know, those eggs and those, tiny invertebrates go to waste and go down into my sump? Once they spawn, like the anthias are always out after lights are off. They're always swimming around. They're gulping something. The Banggai cardinals have humongous eyes. They can see in the dark perfectly fine, and they're always eating something. And you're like, oh, it's that capture of energy, basically, right? I mean, the filtration
Mhm.
system is there for a reason, but like what we were saying earlier, we have a living filter, right? The fish are, also a filter. The coral then filter what the fish cannot filter, right? And then the cycle just keeps on going on with different organisms filtering off of each other, right? And we're just there to dump food into the tank, and that's it. And that's what I
Mhm.
noted a while long ago. It's like, I'm putting so much food and things into the system, and I can't hold the nutrients in there, because of the living filter that we have created essentially. And it's hard to get there. You start a tank off with just live rock, or not even live rock nowadays, and there is no
Mhm.
filtering capacity. So how do you start from zero and to get to 100 like this? You kind of have to think in terms of ecological succession, right? What comes first in a grassland or like the plains, right? You got your grasses, then you got your shrubs, then your trees, and the animals come, right? Something like that. But how do we apply that to our tank, right? You can't just go from day one to a full blown SPS tank. It doesn't work like that, and that's why a lot of people, they strive for that, right? And they're like, all right, I'm so super excited, I'm gonna put my first acro in. But an acropora is not the first thing to settle, a reef.
Mhm.
It's that soft coral, it's that xenia, it's that GSP, a toadstool or something. And I think a lot of people have started to talk about that, adding like fluffer corals into their tank, getting like, introducing the weeds first before, the gems can
Yeah.
exist. Right. And you got to be there to like not cull it, but like maintain it, remove it. And as the system tells you it's ready, you have to be able to say or observe it and act upon it. Right. Because, I mean, you could stay at one step of the ecological succession phase for as long as you want. That's just your type of reef tank, right? You can have a softy tank, but as time progresses out in the wild, other organisms are going to take over. Softies exist for a certain time frame in a specific ecosystem, but if the ecosystem and the dynamics change, different organisms are going to come in. They're going to take over, and then they're going to push those things out, and they're going to live somewhere else. That's just nature. So, but we're here to kind of control nature, but we're also here to introduce nature into our tank and let it take over. So you're kind of fighting with yourself what your desires are and what the system's desires are. You know.
So
Let's see. I
I
think there's some
I
questions in here.
shared. Yeah, go ahead, Alan. Go ahead and hit those questions off. And while you're, yeah, go ahead and do that. Looks like, do you guys believe in controlled feeding and less filtration? Go ahead on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't run carbon or GFO anymore in my system because, like you said, at a certain point, the system becomes the filter, and all you have to do is be there to feed the tank because it's going to get too clean, right? The only major, um, filtration that I have on the system is a big protein skimmer, and that's about it. Protein skimmer kind of serves as a dual function, removing waste products that all the organisms are generating, but also the gas exchange, which is allowing this higher pH. It's if you weren't exchanging that gas, right, and that carbonic acid and that CO2 buildup in the system, and at least kind of degassing it, the system would trend downwards, especially if you have a stock tank and you're just putting food in there.
Mhm.
They're just going to keep respirating. The water's going to get more acidic. But your house, at least, if you crack a window open or, you don't have super high CO2 levels, the house is there to buffer it. The wind, the waves crashing and with the strong winds, it's reintroducing that into the reefs, right? So we can definitely drive our system in different ways, and there's different mechanisms to do it. You could do CO2 scrubber or whatnot. But in my eyes, this is another consumable that is a short term band aid, right? Like what you were saying earlier, Perry. Why not just grow a house plant in the same room? You're going to be breathing fresher air too, and you're going to be supplying
Yeah.
that to the reef, and it's
Like
going.
I said,
What do you need to do?
it all
Yeah,
like circles
it's
around.
all one big cycle. Yeah, it's all one big cycle, and you be using the stuff that you harvest your reef to fertilize that house plant right next door. Right? You dehydrate the skimmate, water it down, and then you have a completely rich fertilizer that you could be introducing to your plants or your garden. It's loaded with potassium, other minerals like that, which are critical for, plant fertilizers, right? Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Well, I mean, that's what's in a lot of these synthetic fertilizers too. But, in this form, that organic fertilizer that you're creating, why let the toilet have all the fun or the sink have all the fun when you can be growing stuff alongside of it? And that's a lot of these vertical farming strategies that a lot of people are starting to employ now, right? It's like growing tilapia alongside your vegetables, things like that. And
Mhm.
once you start seeing that in action, it just it just becomes like a no brainer, especially if you want to make things a little bit easier, kind of rely on less things,
Observation leads to creation, and it can lead to solutions if you spend enough time in it. Um, that's what I've noticed. I shared a thought with you a while back, not publicly, but privately, regarding how the sun is essentially a battery charger, and every living organism is essentially an extension of that energy in one capacity or another in flux. And it kind of, I don't know if it resonated with you or not, but it was a way of saying when we're talking about this closed loop system that we're seeing here, we're talking about energy that's
Mhm.
being sequestered in so many various diverse microorganisms within the aquarium that everybody's having their turn at feeding and respirating. So therefore, to me, from my observations and what how I'm interpreting it, what I'm seeing is essentially like that living filtration, but not just on when we're thinking of that living filtration. We're not. We need to, I think, maybe look past just coral acropora here and look maybe deeper into the system. We're talking about all different types of microfaunas, floras. We're talking about bacteria. We're talking about little mouths and critters and things of this nature. And I believe they're all like symbiotically holding and harboring energy. So perhaps that's a way of allowing this pH drift to be so little, and for what looks like carbonic acid to be like being sequestered. So I don't know if that is anything that lands with you or not, but I'll let you go ahead and go with that interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely similar to how I kind of view the system here, Perry. It's like these organisms are constantly capturing energy, right? You go out every day and you're eating food. That energy, if you don't use it, turns into fat, right? And if we're lucky that we don't have predators that are going to eat us. But in the reef tank, you got tons of little crustaceans out there, and at the nighttime, corals are eating, or even during the daytime too, if they get that signal to actually know that it's a feeding time for them. So it's just really cool to think about how we can be actively harnessing the energy that we throw into the tank. Because you think about it, in my system specifically, like I'm throwing 1,000 watts of light like up over it. Run that for 16 hours. That's 16,000. No, it's 16 kilowatts per day. So you're just like, okay, this is a lot of energy. You get the 16 kilowatts zapped into you all at once. You're gonna be toast, you know. Uh, but like in a reef tank, they're all capable of harnessing it. It's just how efficiently you can design the system so that you don't fry the thing in the. You there, Perry? You're frozen. Earth to Perry. Are you there? Or is it me? Hmm. Well, not sure what's going on here. But let me see what's going on in the comments. Maybe Perry will come back unless it's on my end. Yeah, Perry froze. I guess I'm live. I guess here, Yazin. I'm not sure. And, no, I've not used nitrobiotic before. But purple non-sulfur bacteria are, extremely prevalent. I've done some pretty interesting things that I'll dive into that at a later point. But those those life forms definitely play an important role in nutrient remediation and processing what you have in the system. There's also a possibility that overusage of them can potentially lead to issues as well because they're essentially stripping um, the resources from the water column that you would want to dedicate to other organisms. So it's also finding like a fine balance with that as well. So I've seen like I've observed, and I've also read other people's experience with that as well. Like overdosing is it's not.
You there?
Hey, what's up, Perry? You're back.
You there?
Yeah, yeah. You hear me? You can't hear me? Hmm. Let me rejoin.
You there, Alan?
Do you hear me?
I can't hear you. Let me let me drop out.
All right. I think people in the chat can hear me. I guess we'll have to start using sign language to communicate now. but I guess in the meantime, hey Perry, can you hear me now?
How about now?
I hear you.
Shit. All right, try something else.
Uh, yeah,
Okay, I got you now. You there?
yeah. Do you hear me?
You good? I can hear you fine now.
Yeah, I hear you too.
Okay, cool.
But now
Is there a delay?
I hear another. No, I hear like another voice.
Shouldn't be. Here, let me try something else
You
here.
might
Let me
you might have a video in the background.
here. Let me look. I don't think I do.
Legion.
Is it still delayed? My Wi-Fi is kicking in right now. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. We'll get this fixed in just a second. My bad on that. This should hopefully recover everything. Are you there?
Yeah, I hear you now. We've been playing whack-a-mole for a little bit.
Well, you know what happened, bro? It's my bad. I I forgot to put on my Wi-Fi router. I don't use Wi-Fi. I go directly into the computer. And so
Mhm.
like on days I go live, I turn it on, and I was like, I forgot to turn the damn thing on. Wouldn't you know? So let me get oriented here. All right, sorry about that. It's always something, isn't it?
It's all
At
good.
least it's not a stray cat
Mhm.
walking in during the middle of a live stream this time. That was pretty cool.
That's funny. But, I guess where were we before all that happened?
Well, I think we were
What are we
talking kind of
talking
like
about
that,
here?
how you've been able to sort of close the AM and PM pH gap through feeding and timing
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and talking about how nutrients sometimes are being held in other organisms, and I think this is something we talked about before about testing and why sometimes test kits can send us different ways because it could depend on where we are in the life cycle or stage of that tank at that given moment at that time. So just because we
Right.
get a 0.04 phosphate reading, for example, at 8 a.m., at 8 p.m. that night, we may get a very different number. And I think maybe that's what AquaWiz has maybe allowed for you to see more of like everything over the course of a day, not necessarily on phosphate, but for example, on the pH and on the alkalinity, the way you're able to see the way it's orienting from a data standpoint, which I think is pretty cool.
Y Yeah, so, take this back to gardening again. You think about all the nutrients bound up within the soil, right? But that's mainly
Mhm.
because your soil is at a higher pH. You test
Yep.
your soil when it's at a high pH, you're not gonna see much. You acidify that soil just a little bit, and you're like, "Whoa, where did all this stuff come from?" Right? But it was always there.
Yep.
It's always there in the system, but you just changed, one small component regarding it, and then you see something completely different, where, like, it's not like you introduced anything to the system, you just changed its state. And, take this back to kinda like the pH and the lighting. All those corals are undergoing a lot of photooxidative stress during that intense lighting period. And they need to respirate essentially to regulate their own internal pH, right? Because oxygen for them, well, oxygen for the zooxanthellae, not for the coral. But oxygen for the zooxanthellae is a byproduct. But the coral organism itself requires oxygen to grow, right? And this is where we start talking about that symbiosis, right? And then this goes into the topic about like nighttime calcification. There's some interesting papers on this as well, because depending on the oxygen saturation of the water, you can have different lengths of dark nighttime calcification, right? So if the coral is not photosynthesizing effectively during the day and creating a lot of that oxygen, it can't grow later in the dark when it's not photosynthesizing and it's pulling all the oxygen out of the water, right? And also the coral itself will maintain a certain level so that it doesn't suffocate, right? And as long as there's constant circulation in the water and reintroducing it, the coral is going to, try and hold its breath until the next day comes out, right? And just think about like when you ship a coral in a bag for too long, you keep everything else stable, but you don't pump it with oxygen, you're going to have a really milky, smelly water in a dead coral,
Mhm.
right? Because it
Wasn't it?
essentially suffocated.
Wasn't it
What's up?
Keith or who was it? Somebody was putting I think had an oxygen tank and was actually gassing their f- with oxygen, weren't they? I want to say it was Reef Bum, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I mean it's totally true, man.
Yeah, like, one thing is like, a long time before, like, I would be shipping out really nice, healthy, encrusted, like almost mini colony frags, right? And I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna pack this bag with a ton of water so that, it's a really awesome piece. I don't want it to die in shipping, right? So I'd fill up the bag with like one coral with like 2 or 3 cups of water. And it's still like, I'd overnight it to the person. They'd be saying, like, oh, it's dead on arrival. And I'd be like, what? I packed it with so much water. But that's not
Uh-huh.
what's really important in this state. You really want to pack it with air, right? Having an air bubble in there so that the gases can diffuse into the water itself.
Hmm.
And since I've been, like a lot of times before I ship my my corals now, I'll extract the water from the tank and I'll run an air pump through it, right, to degas and introduce as much oxygen into the water as possible, right? And that since I've been doing that, I've had um, much better rates in regard to DOAs too. And because of that, like it looks a little weird when you get a bag of coral and half of the bag is air, right? And you're like, oh, this thing lives under the water. Why do you send me so much air? But because of that, the coral's not dead, right? You still have a living coral in that bag. It's still breathing. But if I filled that bag up completely with water and I sent it to you, I guarantee you it would be more stress and it would die. So going back to the papers that I read, there's an ideal oxygen saturation to allow the coral to grow during the night. If
Okay.
they're the like the if the oxygen saturation is below a certain threshold, it's also potentially negative to the coral too in terms of growth rate. And then there was another paper where they investigated oxygen saturation and feeding, right? Feeding the coral. So if your tank is poorly oxygenated and you just think, oh, I'm going to feed and feed and feed a ton, you actually get negative growth, right? Instead of positive growth, because in order for you to use the energy that you consume, right, you need to breathe. And if the coral can't breathe efficiently, it's just pollution, right? And you're degrading its environment and it can no longer exist there for a while. And that's why that's why we run protein skimmer, right? That's why we have, the surface of the water agitating, right? And when you send out a coral in a little bag where it's stagnant for, a good part of a day, if you're lucky sometimes, especially when you get stuff from overseas, they just use enough water to submerge the coral and that's it. the rest of it is they pump oxygen into it so that it can actually survive the transit of day or 2 day plus, right? They just need enough water to be submerged, and that's it. Like just like you look at a lot of these corals out there, it's like they can be exposed to air no problem. As long as they're still kind of damp, they'll be fine. I mean, don't let it dry out and bake in the sun for a few days straight. But like, high and low tide, it comes and goes, and these acropora colonies are out of the
Mhm.
water under direct sunlight for hours sometimes. As long as they get, wet again, and they can start breathing again, they're fine. So that was a pretty interesting thing that I've employed for my own practices as well. Um, and side effect is that save a little bit on shipping because the box is lighter. But then also you don't have to worry about subsequent DOAs, and everyone else is happy at the end of the day. It just might not visually be too pleasing or whatever, but when you get behind it and you get a result of a living coral versus a bleached white stinky bag, I'll take that any day. It might not be aesthetic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There, there he is. You there? You might
Can you
have
hear
to
me now?
drop out again. There you go.
All right. I think I was getting a phone call.
Oh, yeah, that
So
that that mutes it out, I think. I'm still getting familiar, man.
yeah.
Like I try to tell people this isn't like this is just us hanging out and talking and and it's not there's no real sponsor or anything like that. So there's nobody that's like doing anything like that. Like, modding, for example, that would have helped earlier. So hopefully I'll get Yaz to help me out in the future and I'll have Yaz take care of everything out there. But yeah, man, it's moving along. The oxygen is definitely going to be critical in that. So it's it. I think that's probably there's something behind the oxygen part of that drift, and the fact that it's the gap is so shrunken. Um, it's that oxygen exchange rate. It's the respiration. It's that breathing in, breathing out.
Right.
Um,
And
I would say it's like this: your system has a like an athletic young 20s set of lungs on it, and you're able to move more air in and out and able to create and move more energy
yeah.
because of the amount of breathing in and out and that exchange rate. So that's how I'm looking at this process from just like just it not really like a layman's more type of way. um it's what it looks like it's doing, which is like in nature. you know um that is the mechanism. It's that up and down, that yin the yang, right? It's the balance and the counterbalance. And I think that is proving that the more diverse, the more applications that are building more diversity within the system is creating more spawns, more feeding responses that are being created are keeping this breathing apparatus constantly moving.
Right.
Um,
Because if you think about what's influencing pH, oxygen isn't a part of that equation. It does Oxygen does influence pH, but pH is a reading of CO2, carbonic acid, carbonates, and bicarbonates, right? It's that ratio. Oxygen is there to facilitate the rise or decrease of pH over time, right? And that's how I'm able to influence the system like this, right? Because at a certain point at night, the pH levels out because the corals have used up all the oxygen in the tank and they don't want to suffocate anymore. So right, so they kind of go into a stasis. But the next day, because that they have been able to grow more in the nighttime, I have more coral, right? And because I have more coral, they consume more CO2. I'm going to raise my pH.
It's
And
just going to
that's
keep going and going and going and going
right.
until you basically have no surface area. Like your top canopy of your tank will eventually it'll be just coral bound if it were to keep up right without intervention.
Mhm.
I would think that that would happen. It would be a blanket eventually, and eventually it would kill itself because it
Oh,
wouldn't be able to
yeah.
sustain. You
Right.
know.
And I mean, getting too much of a pH is also not the best. And that's where feeding is important because when you feed, you force the organisms to respire.
Mhm.
Right. So, like right now, I'm at that tipping, or I'm almost at that inflection point where I'm like, do I want to push the tank beyond 8.7? And this is with me not using any supplement too. So, imagine if I were to use something like Kalkwasser or lye or something, I would have to adjust my feeding to be even dramatically more than what I already do. Like if you like Perry, like every
And
day.
lighting,
Oh
and
yeah,
lighting.
I would
So
have to dial things
you
back,
have to
right?
adjust both of them.
Right, because it's not summer 365 times or 65 days a year. We have seasons, right?
Mhm.
And the planet is controlling all of this. The planet is rotating, it's shifting away from the sun, it's at a different angle. And every day it alternates, right? It rotates. So if I were to, let's say, keep my corals in this optimal growth phase, I could, but not indefinitely, right? Because once I hit that, supercritical pH level, I'm going to be killing myself, right? You know, so and there's also a
You're
certain
gonna have a
point.
full time job just trying to tend to your to your coral garden
Right,
because
and now
it's gonna force bonsai. I mean, you're gonna, and that will be really cool too, man. Like I can't wait until the time comes where the system forces a seasonal bonsai event, and then to see what the lag time is, how the pH is influenced, because it's gonna. I would anticipate you would see a drop, right? And then, but what I would think you might see is about 2 to 3 weeks later, you might see it shoot right back. And
right,
that would be a cool thing to watch too.
and that's the beauty of a calcium reactor because you're always going to be introducing CO2 to control it,
Hmm.
right? And that's why when people back in the day, like 20, 30 years ago, were running a calcium reactor, they had humongous colonies. Because if you weren't using a calcium reactor to reintroduce that acidity and regulate the pH, they would be dead. Your corals would
Hmm.
never get that big. And that's why a calcium reactor is so beautiful and that one piece of equipment can get you to anywhere in like any state that you would want in your reef tank, as long as you know
Who's
how to
the
use it.
maker on that, Alan?
My calcium reactor,
Yeah,
I run a bunch of different brands. On the system that I'm doing all these experiments on, I'm using a Reef Octopus, but on my other systems, I've got Geos, I've got you know, really old ones. I got a aquarium engineering calcium reactor, from like Bill Wan back in the day. I've got an Aquaman. It doesn't matter, reactor's a reactor.
I had a Shuren from Germany. I had a Shuren
Oh
that
yeah, I
jet
used to have
stream.
like
It
one of
was it
those
was top of the line.
Coralline reactors. Those were kind of a pain in the butt though.
Yeah, the Coralin, the dual. Yeah. So like, what are you targeting for I mean, like, so are you dripping? Do you have a drip rate that you're doing, or do you have that tied into your pH? Or like, so how are you dispensing and controlling your calcium reactors? So that it stays sort of locked in.
Yeah, so I'm a bit unconventional this way because, on my 160, I have about 50 pounds of reborn media stuffed in the
Okay.
calcium reactors. Most of the time, like people just use like one bag. So I'm like 4 or 5xing the amount of media to, essentially off gas and kind of limit the negative impact. But, it's not inherently a negative impact, right? Because I'm at that point where I do kind of want to introduce CO2 in the system now, right? Because CO2 is not bad. It's just most of the time we have an excess of it, right? So from there, with that perspective and that lens, it's just knowing when to use the tool at the right time, right? When to use a specific calcium reactor media, because I'm using Reborn right now, right? And Reborn doesn't need a really low pH in order to dissolve. But since I'm at the state where, Reborn's not dense enough, I might have to be switching over to a mined media, right? Where it requires a lower pH in order to actually dissolve it and get it into solution, right? It's like, you're working out at the gym, you do one plate. You've been doing one plate for a year now. It's time for two plates or working your way towards two plates, right?
Right.
And so with this, concept in mind, there is no best. It's just best at what time and when, right? Because if you're an F1 driver driving a Camry is going to be like, oh man, get this snail off the road, But if you're a Camry driver, you're not going to get in an F1 car and control it around turns. You're going to be into the wall. You won't have the reaction time. You won't be able to steer it, and that steering wheel is not easy to turn either. You know But it's just interpreting your system in these different lenses and appreciating the system for what it is in its current state. That's what I really work towards here. Because, I have a lot of Reborn, but there's a certain time where Reborn is not what I need, right? I might have to switch over to like a mined aragonite material, right? But then you start losing some of like the complementary effects of Reborn, right? It could be like different trace element compounds in there as well. You're getting less of the organics within Reborn too. So, it's really about understanding what each tool provides and its limitations in that regard. Hey, what's up, Mark? Um, but yeah, it's that's the beauty of reef keeping, right? And that's also the beauty of life. Um, so yeah, that's what I wanted to say regarding that. And then when you do feed, you're providing that external respiration event basically. Plus, you're providing the corals with the nitrogen, the phosphorus that they do need to build the tissue as well, and also bring down that really basic environment that they were existing in, so that they can spend less energy, self-regulating themselves, right? Because you could be at a certain point where I like to think about it. It's like these two things that more than two things really, but the zooxanthellae and the coral organism itself are in symbiosis, and one or the other can kind of over dominate and and that's going to display itself differently, right? Kind of like when you were back in the Zeo ultra low nutrient days, we were favoring the coral more so than the zooxanthellae, right? And that's why everything was super
Mhm.
pastel looking and kind of looking the way that they did. But now it's more so, how can I have both of these things coexist at the same time at an optimal rate and have them work together to get to the final end state that I desire, right? And now that 20 years, 30 years have passed since those systems and those ideologies have been created. How can we expand upon that, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with any of these regimens that people put out there and sell, but at the end of the day, you know, one size does not fit all. And eventually it might fit you, but then you could grow too, and it's not going to fit you anymore, right? So
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
that.
absolutely. So we've got I just wanted to say hello to Jaguar, what up? Thank you, Yazin, for Mark. Welcome into the chat. Always good to see you, my friend.
Let me
Hello,
just charge
Sharon
my phone.
Mitchell. How are you, Yaz? You the man. I appreciate you, bro. You're gonna take care of business next time we go live. But yeah, so I'm looking into the sun right now, Alan, and I'm getting blasted with late day sun. I can't get enough of it, man. I'm going to adjust my angle so I can
Man,
see you. But
I I wish it was nice enough to go outside right now. It was 80 last week. Now it's dipping down in like the 30s again. So, you can
man,
kind of tell I'm a little pale.
I'm uh, I'm loving every bit of it, man. I mean, it's yeah, the back to the reference earlier. I'm not hung up on nitrogen in terms of using ammonia and stuff like that. I was more or less wanting to talk about what I'm doing right now, which is in an environment that um, gave me the ability to see things in a different perspective, in a different light, pun intended. Um, to be able to give me the awareness and the ability to take the knowledge that the reef is bringing and be able to pay attention to it in a way of almost being able to communicate with the reef system. And I don't expect everyone to buy it or believe in it, but I can show firsthand when you tend to something and you serve it and you take that mindset, it will turn you on to a whole different realm in reefing where you're no longer chasing things, and that was my story. So back to Zeovit and all of that, Alan. That used to be my story. Is I felt like I wanted to push that extra 10% to get to that 100%, and I'm now very good with looking at a balanced ecosystem and realizing I'm not in this life cycle and I'm not at the stage in the life cycle to support that 95, 98% color range that I used to strive for. I think that comes in time. I think I've recognized that, like with the garden, we took a setback this year, but I'm going to respond harder. When you take a setback on the reef, look at it, find out what happened, and hit it harder and hit it better the next time you go back at it. And so, yeah, it was more or less, and I didn't mean to come off inappropriately. But I was really trying to correlate in these abilities to find this information through observation, through nature, through paying attention, and um, and that I brought into the reef, and it's given me the ability to not have to micromanage the reef. Instead, I can feed the reef, step back, brush it, and do my thing, and it's growing. Now, I want to mention that, of course, I could spend 15 minutes to an hour a day scrubbing this and doing that and maintaining, and I could push the envelope as far as I wanted. I think sometimes we got to look at time as that resource, right? What is your time? How much time do you have? And so when we're
Right.
looking at that reef, for me, I'm not like your level or some of these other guys out there, I'm happy with that. But what I do have is a nice looking reef to look at, but I'm able to do the other things that I enjoy doing as well. Not that
Hmm.
others aren't. But just saying that it gives me the freedom to utilize sort of the same thing with gardening. Because listen, I could spend hours and hours and hours weeding, or I can just look at a weed as a friend, right? You don't, yeah,
Yeah.
you probably like, wait, what? A weed is a friend? Yeah, because you can utilize that energy. Because remember, it's there for a reason. It's there because it's pulling something out of the soil. There's something that's turning that weed and that patch of weed on in that soil that it's mediating. It's wanting to pull from that area. So what I now do is I look at it like, okay, well, I'll plant something in the neighborhood of it, and instead of pulling the weed completely, I trim it. And that way the root system has to respond. It has to put new shoots up. And by the time it does, the nutrients that I cut and put down next to the base of the plant I'm trying to install is now getting the nutrients as they decompose around its area. and I just treat it like that until eventually, when that plant settles and I know it's doing well, an herb, for example, I'll then begin to pull the weed in its root system and disengage the root system, and then I'll compost that off. But I
Mhm.
utilize those weeds until I'm at, and I think like I look at algae, and I'm doing the same thing with algae right now. It's taking a surface area because let's face it, it has a surface area. So I could look
Oh,
at it
yeah.
like I got to get rid of it. I got to get rid of it, or I can look at it like, well, it's occupying space for a certain period of time, space, energy, right? And it's currently occupying that space because it has the surface area and the photosynthetic capacity as well as the nutrient capacity to support its growth. Coincidentally, the coral seems to have the same sort of dynamics, and it's doing well at the same time. So I can either A, freak out, or B, let it ride and know that the coral, if I tend that and don't let it get out of control and tend it, that eventually the coral is going to leverage the surface area. It's going to cast the shadow and it's going to begin to fade back, and the algae is going to become a nutrient source for the overall system at some point as it begins to die off, whatever's left over after the protein skimmer. So I just thought it would be a good way of sort of bringing that into the kind of the closed loop mentality, right? Um,
Yeah.
Weeds are important in gardening if you utilize them properly, and they are there
Yeah, I
for a
mean,
reason.
yeah, and I mean, that's the issue with monocultures. Um, growing just one thing, you're gonna have so much issue trying to grow it at a certain point, even though, it might have seemed easy day one, day 3,000, that one thing that you were trying to grow is no longer gonna grow, right? Because everything else in the ecosystem is building up. It's not getting remediated. It's not getting turned into a different format. Eventually, that accumulation is going to be your downfall too. Um, it's similar concept as to why people run a refugium. I don't personally because depending on what you're growing down there, it's just a hassle for me. But like what I do now is I allow the coralline to grow. I allow the film algae to grow on the glass because they're serving a purpose too. And eventually, once their purpose is no longer needed from me, I reintroduce it to the system. I scrape it off, and the corals eat it. But I always leave a little bit
A
for it to
hundred
regrow.
percent.
That's it. If you
It's
scrape it
gold.
100%, yeah, I mean, you scrape off all that coralline algae, I mean, that little patch that's growing on your glass probably took weeks, maybe a month to appear. But if
Hmm.
you scrape it all off and start from clean again, maybe you get an algae outbreak because
Well,
it's,
and it'd also be interesting to see the way the calcium reactor, how that influences the reactor, the drip rate, or maybe the pH and everything. Because I guarantee you, if you do a heavy scraping and you're getting that much built up, then it's gonna be cosmetic to the system. That's.
y- yeah, and to go back what I was saying earlier, like these higher pH environments, it makes it easier for those types of algae to exist, right? Cal- Coralline is going to have a much easier time in a high pH, high mineral environment than, let's say, like green hair algae or something like that, right?
Hmm.
Because green hair algae doesn't have to precipitate calcium, magnesium, potassium from the water. It's just going to suck it up from the rock or whatever surface that it's growing on. But in a low pH environment, that coralline algae is essentially melting away, right? So when, all these signals that we observed back in the day, it's like, oh, wait till your tank grows coralline, then you can grow SPS. Well, that's the mechanism behind it, right? If coralline
Hmm.
algae is able to precipitate all those minerals from the water and build its own biomass, who's to say that you can't grow an acropora or like a montipora or something like that? Because they exist through the same mechanism, whereas like a fleshy or a filamentous algae exists using a different mechanism, right? They have a
Hmm.
different root structure compared to coralline, you
Yes.
know? And then, it's just being, deriving that insight from these observations. It takes time and it takes a lot of you being wrong in order to arrive at these conclusions. And even then, who's to say that I'm 100% right in 100% of the situations? You only know what you know.
Well, and like I said, that's that friction point that happened earlier, and I'll leave it be. But when you're heading in a place where I'm trying to travel, um, the dichotomy of right and wrong loses sort of substance and loses interest to me. Those who want to defend it, they also lose a lot of value and system and relevancy in my realm. And I say that because we can always argue, but most of everything that people believe in truth is perception based. It's based on
Yeah,
how it interacts with the skin suit that you are temporarily residing. And that is it in a nutshell. And so me getting lost into this idea of, oh, well, I'm right and you're wrong and this and that, it does is waste time, energy, and space. And we don't have but so much time, and energy is also a limited thing. It's a resource. And so, how we utilize our energy and how we direct our energy and how we try to manage it is also relevant. And so, as building a reef, what is your time? What I ask myself this question all the time: is the juice? It's Rich Ross, real famous for saying, "Is the juice worth the squeeze?" I love that Rich Ross. Um, I don't think he's the one who I really started hearing saying it, and when I started hearing saying it, that's when it gained more relevancy for me. So that's why I credited him that. I'm sure it goes back in way back, but keeping that in mind, shout to him. Um, is it really worth it? You know, and in
yeah. I
this
mean, it's
instance, you are getting a lot of valuable information. So this is very, very, very much worth it. And it's this is data that hopefully will help the success of our hobby. And I think that's where we both are. I think why we connect well is because we are looking at a broader, bigger picture than an argument over who uses what type of product on their system. We're looking beyond that, and we're looking more into a whole different space. And yeah, I just think that it's worth noting, right? Right. That's all.
yeah. I mean, the one important thing for me, I guess, throughout my life is just to go with the flow, keep an open mind, because like you said earlier, everything is through your own perception and your own lens, right?
Mhm.
Someone could be yelling at you, right? But then you take 10 steps back and they're just whispering to you. So what's the truth, right?
It's all
You know,
perception.
right. So I mean, I people can do whatever they want. I'm not here to tell you to copy me. But if you're willing or you want to try something different, just don't be, stubborn, because that's not going to get you anywhere, in my opinion. That's all.
Well, we could get into lessons and all of these things, but everybody everybody has a chance at some point to learn their lessons how they choose to learn them, when they're ready to learn them, for whatever circumstances bring them to that level of awareness to learn them. And I will leave it at this. I was fortunate enough to find the lowest of the lowest of lowest points in my life, and by doing so, I've never ever have to worry about what it is going to be like to be low again. And so that's why this kind of stuff doesn't affect me at all, because I've already been as low as you could possibly go. So anything that anybody wanted to bring doesn't affect me like that anymore, because I've risen from a different place. And I've allowed it to, like you're doing with your reef, I've allowed it to make me more honed, a better person as a result. And so, yeah, man, I mean, it's all time based, like your time right now. You're taking the time to share your time and information, your knowledge, your data with me. That is something I've always said I always honor and respect. Like, thank you for your time. because your time is way more valuable to me than anything you could possibly give me, right? In terms of value, like, oh, well, I'll send you this or I'll send you that, right? Like that's great, but it's time to me. Time means way more. And I guess it's because I'm at a different age, maybe, too, that it definitely my curve is going to be different. And I think that interplays into the reef keeping. If you're young, you're able to go at your level. You're 3 in the morning and you're still awake and you're still studying to be a better coral gardener. And when you said that in a chat, I was just like, man, like this is what I love so much about Allan is like his level of commitment. There's no one there that's giving him a medal or anything. He's doing it because he just wants to be a better steward. Like that's literally all this guy wants to do is just be better at what he's doing. And I admire that. And I'm so stoked that we're seeing what we're seeing unfold here with your reef. And that, like I said, that information is going to be critical moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, the reef keeping hobby is so cool in that, a lot of times the hobbyists are the pioneers, paving the way forward for a lot of these things. Not so much the researchers or the scientists, but I give them credit to be able to enact and actually put pen to paper a lot of these things, the arithmetic, the equation, and to explain it to people. But a lot of times, like what you said earlier, that first thing to even before you go down that rabbit hole is the observation, right? You see something curious and you want to figure out why you got curious in the first place, right? And by doing that, hobbyists have just so much hands-on time with these these organisms, these animals, these systems. It's just through, it's just through probability and it's through chance essentially. You look at like Brownian motion. Eventually, the right particle is going to bump into that other particle, and it's going to cause it to jiggle. And if there's enough hobbyists and there's enough people doing this and enough people like looking into it, you start a cascade, right? I mean, it's really cool in that regard because this hobby isn't like a lot of other hobbies where there's a lot of foundational research done. There's a lot of textbooks out there or things like that. So it's just kind of like a vast frontier that you can go in any direction. You might hit a brick wall sooner or later or faster than others, but that's where you pivot and you go in a different spot. You keep on finding yourself through this, vast abyss or you just keep on going. And as long as you stay committed to it, you'll find something fun eventually. And everyone, settles in some different niche of the hobby, depending, like you said, on their time or their commitment. There's nothing wrong with that. If you don't have, uh, you know, hours and hours to observe, well, it might not be best for you to try and care for a lot of these demanding things. Something within your realm of possibility, right?
Mhm.
There's our desires and our actual needs, right? They're completely two different animals.
I
Um,
think it's too in
so
the schedule. What is your schedule? What do you do for a living? Do you travel? Like so
yeah,
these
for
are
sure.
and then then you've got the other avenue you can bring into the fold, which is technology. So some people can levy their time by utilizing like Mike, for example, and what he's doing with his automatic feeding system. Now that is buying him time. So again, like there are time, like I'm never going to sit here and say technology is not great. I think it's amazing, but this is a place where if I'm a guy and my job is cutting corals, not saying that that's what he's doing, but let's say that's what he is doing. And I've got to have my hands in the water, cutting corals, fragging, doing all this all day long. But then I got to stop and I got to feed, I got to do this. And dude, imagine now you just saved yourself time. And time
Yeah.
is a commodity, right? And how can we find ways to make this reef experience fit our schedule, and before we even make the decision on the purchase, are we going to be able to do this or not? And I think that gets back to that thing you were speaking on earlier.
Yeah, and that's why, the Aqua Wiz is so it's been so beneficial to me because, it saves me, I don't know how many hours it saved me so far. Imagine like doing an hourly alkalinity test. That's at least 2 or 3 minutes each session, right?
Well,
And
it's definitely giving you time to stay up till 3 in the morning and study more.
yeah, I mean, because I just look at my phone when I'm at my computer, and I'm like, okay, cool, and I'll keep that note in my head or something. But it's lifted the burden of testing, and it's given me much more insight than just testing one parameter alone, because it's essentially, it's not just a alkalinity tester, it's a multi-parameter tester essentially, right? With your pH in conjunction with those two powerful tools in hand. Um, and the main thing apart from like other like routine maintenance, like a water change or something, is I just have to be there to feed the tank, and I use that as my me time with the system and observing it, right? Just I don't know, like, if a lot of people do this, but I think it's a good habit too, is that you should start weighing the amount of food that you put into the system.
Mm.
So for example, Perry, it's like in a 160, I'm putting about 40 grams of frozen food. Well, 40 grams might not sound like a lot, but 40 grams per day, you weigh out 40 grams of food and you look at it and you're like, that's a good amount of food going into a tank every day. And it's only going up. It won't go down unless I trim
I
down
mean,
the
that's like,
forest.
yeah, I mean, that's like almost 2 ounces, dude. That's a lot of food.
Hmm. And
That
so
is a
you
lot of
think
food.
about that. It is a lot of food. But then you look at the coral behind me, and you could see that it wants the food. It needs it.
It's the final part of the food web, right? I mean, it's like not the final part, but it's like, it's towards that latter part of the, it's you're watching where your food's going. I mean, it is going to the fish, but it's also going other places, obviously. Because
Yeah.
I would imagine that your coral mass is increasing dramatically as a result of your increased feeding.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best part of my day, right? I work until 5 or 6 p.m. every day. I can't, maybe I can take a glance at the tank if I'm at home or something, but I can't sit there for a few hours and enjoy it like I want to. So
Right.
when, the hours come down, when the lights are waning down and I'm not getting blinded by the light, I can sit in the fish room and just kind of turn my back, look at one system, turn my back and look at the other system, and just watch the fish dart around, the corals open up and eat. Um, and you get to have fun with it. And that's, like what you said earlier, that's how I find the time and I spend my energy, my limited time here to enjoy it. Right. I don't wanna be there every day worrying about, like, the minutia of the system, but before I had to, and it was definitely a large tax on me. I couldn't be doing all the fun, other cool things that I like to do on the side. Like, I have a life beyond growing coral, and I think most people do,
Mhm.
especially most reefers. I mean, this is just a small aspect of us, but it's
Sometimes I
just something
wonder,
that I
but
love. Yeah.
no, I'm just being a dick.
Uh,
That's what I do. Um, but no, no, you're absolutely right, man. I mean, again, it's multifaceted. I mean, like the cool thing for me, it's like I didn't realize is like all these things that I enjoy doing were essentially the same thing. And so for me, it doesn't bother me a bit. Like so if my hands aren't in the water, then then they might be, in the soil. And I might not even wash my hands in between. Like seriously, I'm at that point where like I think the soil is probably doing wonders. No, I'm just kidding, but
oh,
I don't want to
I
stir up any more pot. But yeah, dude, I mean, it's awesome. I mean, I try to bike regularly, and exercise regularly. I eat once a day, I mean, like this is the life. I mean, this is what I do. I breathe every aspect of what I do, and it manifested exactly my dream. And my dream is to incorporate health, vitality, be able to grow medicine, be able to grow food, be able to provide myself with every supplement, every medicine, everything I could possibly need to be able to provide myself with my diet, be able to live off my diet, be able to exercise every single day of my life, be able to bring in sunlight into my body, be able to reef keep. I mean, dude, it's a dream come true, and reef keeping is what started all of this for me. And so, without reef keeping, a lot of these things might not have happened. And yeah, so you're great at what you do. It's because you're passionate. That's what it is. It's just passion. You're very passionate about reef keeping and coral keeping, as well as like way beyond that, and the mechanisms that drive it. And I think you're also interested in mechanisms that are similar to the same mechanisms that drive it, right? To other areas and other avenues and like me, like gardening. I think you dabble in gardening as well. So
Yeah, not as much as reefing, but I do.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it teaches
it's,
you the same lesson.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same book. You learn the same things, 1 plus 1 will still always be 1, but then, yeah, you wrap it around a parentheses or something, like, what does that do? So, I take that back, 1 plus 1 is not 1, it's 2. But, it's just still the same lesson, you translate it, you shift it around, it's still the same thing. My old man always said, like, you shouldn't dislike something because you're bored of it. You should still try and learn as much as you can because you never know when it's useful to you. I've always kind of taken that to heart, even like,
Mhm.
and when I was back at school, it's like, oh, I hate this class. But my old man would be like, can't hate it. You still got to be good at it because even if you hate it, you might need it one day.
Yep.
And that's it.
My when Cindy was, my late Cindy, when she was alive, she used to call me Pear Guyver. That was my nickname. And if you probably are too young to remember the original movie, or not movie, the original TV
The
show
original
in the
show,
'80s called
MacGyver.
MacGyver.
Yeah.
But I was, when I was a little boy, I got a remote control car, and of course it was Christmas time, and and you're excited and you break out your new radio controlled car, and I slammed into a wall, broke it, and I was pouting. And my stepdad, when you ended up, it's basically I call him my father, but my dad came over and said, why the long face, kind of thing, and said, why are you giving up? Kind of same thing like your dad said. And said, well, it's broke. And he goes, is it? And I go, well, yeah, look. And he goes, yeah, well, it appears to be broke. And so he took a screwdriver, took the top off, and he just started looking at it and just once overed it. 5 minutes later, he took my sister used to have braces. So he took one of those little braces, rubber bands, that they used to have, and he
Hmm.
next thing you know, puts the screw back on and goes, off you go. And it taught me at a very young age, right? It said, wait a minute, if you observe, you slow things down, and you really take the time to just look at it. Look, stop, look, observe, wait, take a minute, breathe. What do we have here in front of us? All right, this is really not that difficult. And then onward we go. And I think with reef keeping, you have that same sort of thing, because you have that structure, like what your dad was telling you, it's in the background. Like with me, it's in the background. I didn't know that it would have relevancy until later in my life, but it's there, right? And you have
Yeah.
these things that you've learned, right? Your dad probably would have said, "Oh, no, no, you ain't throwing that away. Are you not finished with it?" Like, if like food and stuff like that. He sounds like that kind of guy, which I respect the what out of, So yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah, it's
mean,
all relevant.
he's definitely taught me a lot, and, like, I remember, like, he'd always whenever I was frustrated or something, he wouldn't always step in until, I needed it, but, like, he'd always say, like, "Where's your creativity?" "Where's your creativity at?" And then, you sit there and you're like, "Hmm, how do I get creative about this?" And then, it might take you another half hour or an hour or something, but then you do it yourself and you feel accomplished, feel good. Like, I remember, like, back in the day, he would always tell me to save all the spare parts from all the equipment. And now I'm like, oh, we got all this junk. Our cabinet's full. And then one day, our tank busts a leak. And I'm like, oh, shoot, the tank's leaking. Oh my gosh. I'm just like, I call him up. He's like, oh, yo, you got to come home. He's like, all right, look at all the spare parts and try and find something in the meantime. And lucky enough, like, I could jerry rig something together, patched it up well enough so that, the tank didn't just leak all out into the house, and then we repaired it. And, I was like, "Shit," I mean, it's kind of a mess and it's kinda a clutter, but, like, when it does happen, you're thankful for it, you know? Or, like, anything like, when I set up a calcium reactor or something, when you don't have all the exact fittings to get the feed pump running or anything like that. Just having something in there to mash in, to like something basic as like a reducer, because like you can have a bunch of different pumps, and you're like, oh, do I really have to go out there and buy a new pump just to run this thing, even when this thing's working just fine? It's like we jerry rigged a reducer together to get it down to 1/8 line tubing, and you're like, oh, sick, sweet. Because on one of my systems, it's run off a MaxiJet, right? And those MaxiJet outlets don't go straight into, um, you know, uh, the the tubing on a calcium reactor, because our old calcium reactor had different tubing. And I was just like, at that time I was a lot younger, and I didn't have money or an income or anything like that. And I was just like, oh man, I'm gonna have to wait, so long to save up my allowance and or like do a lot of all these extra things to get the money to do it. And I was just like, I was just digging through all our spare parts and everything, got a few tubes together, glued them, got another tube, reduced it down, and it was able to sustain the pressure. And it's still running on that system today. So it's been like over 5, 6, no, no, not 5, 6, over 10, 15 years since I've done that, and it's still running. It's that same component that I made when I was a little kid and I carried around, still use it on different systems. So, I mean, it's, those little lessons and those little things really do take you far in life, I'd say, like, like what you were to reiterate, Perry, it's like, same with keeping a reef tank. It's like, you're always gonna face some type of obstacle eventually. It's just how you compose yourself and get over it. That's what's gonna build you, and that's what's gonna dictate if you stick around or not.
Well, it's there is an energetic aspect to it that some will eventually come to understand
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
can
I mean,
utilize like positive sounds, positive energy, the way you are, the way you talk with your animals. I mean, if you have a dog, you already know that your dog, it has a sense that is connected to humans, right? And they can feel your energy even without you saying with your voice or your tone. But if you do shift your tone, you shift your pitch. Um, they are so intuitive, they can pick up on it, right? And I truly believe that plants, and so, with corals being sort of a hybrid, I would put them in the same sort of category and say that, your energy also dictates the pleasantries or lack thereof of your fruits.
oh yeah. I mean, that's probably the next frontier, right? It's like, I've started looking at the foods and the lights and whatnot. But like, what other parts of the ecosystem and its environment are, you know, factors of your end result here for growing your corals, right? It's like with the flow, is there like a specific type of pattern that you could kind of emulate, or like what you're saying with the sounds of the reef too? Just think about all the inverts that click and snap, and like the angels out there in a reef. Right? They're making noise. A lot of people don't think about it, but like, yeah, fish make noise. They talk.
Oh, especially
You could put like
cardinals, man. Like bang eyes, they're noisy
yeah,
suckers, man.
yeah. I didn't realize that. I just got. It's probably been over 15 years since I've kept Bengai cardinals, and I recently got 4. They're so cool.
Oh my
They're
god,
like
dude.
they just hang they're so cool, like, they hang around this big stag colony, and they kinda weave in between the branches and then just kinda duck in and out, and it's like, wow, this amazing fish. But yeah, like, I mean, like, cardinals are super overrated in a reef tank too because of how just their nature, right? They just kind of hover around a coral, eat whatever floats by, and they defecate right on top of it, like depositing all those resources directly on the coral, and that's why
They can take
those little
some
fish.
big chunks of they can take some chunks.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
those
and that's
they
like
have some big
they
mouths.
they can eat a they can eat a piece of krill, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
You're like that fish is tiny. That fish is tiny. It's like this big. And then it just swallows the whole piece of krill. And like, that damsel's not going to do that. A damsel right next door is not going to do that, but that cardinal will. It'll swallow you whole. Um,
Yeah, but,
so that's,
how many just talk about that one fish and how it interplays into the symbiosis of the reef, and when it defecates, it's gonna be a larger particulate than your smaller fish, and so it's now extending more mouths are being, are getting food sources, right? So it's actually becoming another dynamic in the process of breaking down things into their finer parts. It just is one more cog, in the wheel, if you will. You know,
yeah. I mean, you can just think about it as using a bigger sized filter sock, you know? Because like a Bangai and a
totally.
cardinal are roughly the same size. But, Bangai could eat a piece of food like 4 or 5 times larger than that damsel could, you know? So you just think about, like, running different filter sock sizes and what's gonna happen to your tank, and then you look at that like, "Hmm, do I really need the filter sock or do I need different fish?" Right?
I mean, that's where I'm at. Like, I'm really like, I'm stoked that we started doing these lives and stuff, and we catching up, and a lot of it comes back, and I put back to the reef here, and it's just freed me up. I mean, I don't have, I'm not trying to push, so I'm just allowing. I can recognize I'm in the juvenile sort of stage, and I'm kind of at that teenage stage where they're very noisy, very loud, very obnoxious, and that's kind of where my tank is at right now. And so I recognize, through raising children, I guess I should say, um which I have a comment on that, by the way. But yeah, through the virtue of raising children, that 13-year-old mark, that's about where I'm at with this life cycle. And so I recognize that it's going to put a lot of noise into the system right now, and it's still unsteadied. It's going through its puberty. It's trying to develop itself. It doesn't know its path, its way it's going to go, whatever. And so I think right now it's just like I'm taking that approach of I'm just going to like let it do its thing, because I'm going to hit that tipping point. And the confetti is giving me a prelude of what's going to be happening soon. I'm starting to hit that point, and I can tell with what's going on with the confetti. I know that I'm about to kind of go over a hump, and the coral behind me, this Miyagi, is doing really well too.
No,
And
yeah,
so if
that's a
I'm going to go
beauty.
over this hump, yeah, it's looking really, really, really saucy for a Miyagi. Um, and I'm gonna get to a point, and I know I'm approaching it, right? So, it's like I know I'm about to get my car at 16, and I'm about to get there. And then once you get that car, it's on. And once you got the wheels, it's off and you're cruising, you're gone. And so, if I put it into sort of that perspective, um, I'm still in the very younger stages of the system. If I were to look at like Mike's reef, for example, or your reef, yours is, you've reset it a few times, but like when you look at the age of the actual system, and the pipes and the glass and the sump and the all the other parts that are composed, we're talking years and years and years of that running. And so while the corals might have cycled in and out, that's just one part of the cycling in and out, right? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, 100%. It's
you're in a
like
more mature, you're in that, you're in that I just turned, 30, and I got that promotion. I just got that badass new sports car, and I'm rocking and rolling and riding down the road screaming my head off because I'm making money, and I'm having a good time. Careless, and not that you're careless, but you know what I'm saying? Like you're rocking. You are rocking right now. And I'm here for the ride along, man. I'm enjoying it. It's certainly interesting every time we catch up to see how much further and then how much tighter that pH, that gap is shrinking, but then to see it increasing, and then to see the like the jaw dropper, for example, to look the way it looks, it's like it's got to be a correlation. I don't say these things anymore like I used to try to chalk everything up to, oh, it's a coincidence, or it's a no, 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 no. There's always a reason for everything. And so I don't think it's a mistake. I think it's actually
Mhm.
because of what you're doing is why that jaw dropper is looking the way it is, and why I think you're actually getting it to grow possibly better than the waters it came out of, um, or at least heading in that direction. And that right there
Yeah.
is like that's when you just feel really good, because it's like, man, like I know like people don't realize what a jaw dropper is like, but to me it's so sentimental of a coral, and it's a piece that
Yeah.
it carries a price tag, but it might make it a little bit more sentimental because of that. But it was just for me, it was that coral that, like, man, it's I can't even talk about it properly. But to see what
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
doing with it, that's the incredible part. And even like behind you, I that the that's your is that your toxic pink lemonade?
that's the fox flame.
Oh, is it? Fuck, I'm sorry, my eyes are freaking horrible. I couldn't see how. Yeah, okay. Well, that one's looking insane. I
Yeah, I
I
mean, I've
mean,
gotten a few nice compliments on the fox flame, but, like, yeah, it doesn't even compared to the fox flame that I've
it's
grown out
so
of the
shaggy,
house,
it threw me off, dude. Like, seriously, I could
but
it's normally not that shaggy.
it's not that shaggy, but, like, you can also see the amount of yellow that I can
Yeah,
pull
I
out
mean,
on
the
it too.
yellow is what threw me off, man. Because normally when you see those colors oriented together, like, your mind wants to go straight to pink lemonade as a reference point, and I think that's why it did that.
Yeah, like, that's what, one of my other friends I think Jackson always says, like, I show this picture to him, he's like, "Is that pink lemonade?" I'm like, "No, it's the fox flame." And then I show him the pink lemonade, and he's like, "Whoa." You know how Jackson is, he's a fun dude.
Oh,
Uh,
I
but,
love Rich, man.
yeah, but yeah, it's like it's super cool to, like, see it, different corals in different tanks, and then kinda, try and derive, like, what could be leading to that? Why does it display itself in this way, in this system? Because, like, not just, like, the jaw dropper, but, like, I have pink lemonades in my control system, in my experiment system, and they're like night and day too. It's a similar effect to what you see on the jaw dropper in terms of, like, polyp density, the way that it's
Mhm.
growing, the polyp extension, and like I said earlier, it's like having those 2 systems run essentially, like, in 2 different rooms of the house, but being maintained by the same person and the same husbandry apart from just a few small tweaks. You can really see, like, the how endless the possibilities are, and how, there's a potential, it's like kinda like the butterfly effect, right? Like, every small little change that you do can drastically spiral and cascade out of completely, different paths at the end of the day. Just every small decision that you make compounds and compounds over and over and over again. And you could be, there could be another Perry, like a cloned Perry out there that, was living right next door to you, and you could be two completely different
Probably.
people at the end of it.
But
You know?
I truly hope not, but no, yeah, I get it, dude. I'm coming inside now because the mosquitoes, to be out right now, that's not a good. I mean, it's a good sign, but it's not a good sign. So I'm going to go ahead and make an early prediction, because I'm a Florida cracker, and you're probably going to go, "Oh my God, he just called himself a cracker," and you wouldn't know unless you're from Florida that that's actually a term of endearment. But I've been here, born and raised, third gen. Um, this is going to be a hell of a hurricane season, because with the bugs biting already. like they normally don't start biting this early, and for them to start biting
Yeah,
already, it's like, and for me to be have a
it's
suntan like I do right now, um,
it's
it's
March.
March. Yeah, it's still too early for this kind of intensity in terms of the sun, and
You
I can
know,
tell you the sun is so powerful right now.
there's even talks about it being a really bad El Nino year too. Like potentially El Nino carrying over to 2027. And that's another, another thing that's to kind of think about, and just like the impact that kind of society has had on the planet. Cuz you think about it,
Mhm.
the reefs can't handle that warmth for that extended period of time. Just like how we were talking about earlier, or what I was saying, it's like, oh, this is, the optimal growth phase. But out in the nature, out in the wild, they're not getting this experience forever. Like, like for
Mhm.
now, things might be okay, but like what happens when I hit 8.9, like 8.8
Mhm.
pH? It's like I can't. You start riding that line where you can't influence as much as the designs that you have implemented, right? So you have to essentially change the design of how you run the system. You have to change your mindset, right? Because right now,
Oh,
I
totally.
reset the tank. I reset the tank last year, and I'm in that point where I want to fill up all the gaps that I made, right? So I'm willing to kind of ride this edge. But once I I slip up or something, or I forget to feed a day, and the pH creeps up a little bit too much because I didn't induce the adequate amount of respiration, who knows what could happen? I could lose a lot of things, right? And that's where, being that steward comes into play, right? It's like you have to be able to observe, and you have to be able to understand where you exist and what they need, not just what you want,
Oh, I
you
agree.
know?
All right, so I want to take a question. I want us both to answer. It was from Jaguar. Mark had to step out. It was I'll take it, and then I'm gonna I'll answer, and then I'm gonna run to the bathroom, and then I'll come back, and you can take it as soon as I run away. Um, but it's, what's the next evolution in your opinion for reef keeping, or what do you want to see in the next 5 years, or say to progress the hobby, or so to progress the hobby. Um, so I'll start on that. The next evolution, in my opinion, on reef keeping, the next evolution, I just think more of understanding simplicity. I think we're going to get to a point where I think some are going to learn that being a steward is the only path, because as things get rough, and if they continue to get rough, uh, those who are truly down and are truly passionate will continue to find a way. I know I was laughed at for making pee jokes, but literally, if you could find a way to utilize everything and utilize everything throughout in a looping system, whether it be dietarily, whether it be through your reef, whether it be through anything, these are ways that you can save money. These are ways that you can stay in the hobby, maybe, or not. These are the way you can continue to be relevant or not. Where is it going? Okay, I'll say it like this, straight up. Everyone knows. Let's not ignore the elephant in the room. The economy is not exactly in the best form. So keeping that in mind, if you're going to spend your money, where are you going to spend your money right now? You're going to spend your money on the things that you need versus the things you want. And if we continue to go this direction, then those who are in a mindset where they're able to utilize everything down to the nub are going to be able to continue to exist where we're going. And I mean that on many levels, not just in reef keeping. So when we're looking at reef keeping specifically, I would say it really coincides where, like a food forest. I talked about it earlier. I've talked about this for 2 or 3 years. Eventually, some people are going to say, "Oh man, remember that crazy guy that was on this reef show that was talking about it? I wish I had a food forest right now, because damn, with the oil prices going up and with commerce shutting down and food prices are going up and all of these things. Oh, shoot, this guy. Oh, that freaking that weirdo cracker over there in Florida actually had a pretty good idea, didn't he? Um, this is the why is because I don't own a crystal ball, but I would like to think that I'm observing enough that I can see trends and patterns and things that are going on. So I'll make my best opinion on what's coming. It's going to get hobby centric. What do I mean by that? Hobby centric, meaning the people that are in the hobby, for the love of the animals, are going to thrive.
Hmm.
More
Yeah,
people are
I
going to
agree with you there,
connect.
Perry.
More local hobbyists are going to connect, more local coral swaps, things like this. It's going to be a very it's going to be like stepping back almost. But again, we have to match the life cycle of where our economy is, like our tank. Where's the economy? Well, that's where your tank is going to be. So are you equipped to be able to run it at that level? Right. So fortunately, you have the data sets now to know, okay, well, I know what it looks like to rock and roll. But now I also, I have the wherewithal to know if I need to put the brakes on and I need to go and slow things down a little bit. I have my mind fully wrapped around the ability to do that. So observation of not just your tank, but observation of everything. And I think that's my answer to that. And next 5 years, I just like that. I think you're going to see more guys that are truly gurus and loving the hobby are going to rise. I mean, it's like this. You know, if things were to get difficult and you needed to now take your time and your energy and resources and put them towards something else because it's more pressing, something has to take a dip, something has to drop off. And so, finding the balance, like I said, for me, fortunately, all of these things are colliding at the right moment in my life for me to be able to do what I'm doing because I believe like herbalism is the future of medicine. I believe that growing your own food is the future of food. I believe that local food in local communities and people working together is the future. Now, do I have a crystal ball to know that that's what's going to happen? No. I just know that whatever we're currently doing doesn't seem to be doing such a great job because of where we continue to go. Beautiful. Which one? Which one was the last one? That was the tenuous. The is that the God uh, which one is it? Help me. The pink one. Uh
Think
Pink
highlighter.
highlighter. Dude, that is incredible. Like incredible.
Yeah,
Um
it's
incredible.
yeah, that I completely agree with you, Perry. And just to take it back to your point about the economy, the stock market can only go up until it goes down, right? You can't expect it to go up forever. It has to correct itself. And then just with my background and be able to be fortunate enough to have an education in that field, um, and then it just makes complete sense when you look at it in terms of a reef tank, right? It's like what we were saying earlier about the pH, right? Oh man, I love it when it's going up. Oh yeah, everyone's like, oh yeah, high pH, high pH. And then it gets too high. What happens? You have no coral. You have no fish, even. It that precipitation event will get so drastic and crazy. You'll turn the tank into milk, and everything
Oh,
will
it'll
be gone.
burn. Yeah, it'll just burn everything up, man. Like, and then it just
Oh
that's
yeah,
it. Everything melts. Yeah.
right. And like yeah, and like to add on that, it's like the higher the economy or the stock market goes, you can't be or like you can't be removing the regulation because there's going to be no control. It's going to become the wild west, right? It's like in the pH example here, the higher that pH goes, I have to control it more by dumping in so much more food into the tank. If I let that pH keep on rising, I bet you my corals will outburn. They will start to burn and die. because I'm not controlling the tissue growth to match the mineral growth,
Mhm.
right? You can't just grow a company just by, sending it to a bunch of investors and pumping you with money. That doesn't translate to growth. It just translates to capital. And if you don't use the capital efficiently, well, what's the point? Right? You're not hiring the right people. You're not putting the right systems in place to support you when you're, 10 years down the road. Your company's going to go kaput. And
It's again,
that's
it's back
potentially
to
what could
energy.
happen.
It's
Yeah.
energy, and where's the life cycle and what stage are you in? Are you matching the life cycle? Are you matching the stage? In business, the smart guy is matching their business, and they're able to look at what's going on in the global financial economy, the local economy, all across, and are able to sort of paint a picture, and then are able to make those accommodations to their business. And a lot of times your P&L is going to give you a snapshot, and it's going to show you your trends. If you're able to understand a P&L and a worksheet, all you got to do is it just jumps right off. If you're able to look at patterns at all and have any pattern recognition, it jumps right off the sheet, and it shows you right there what the hell's going on real time. And luckily I was schooled in restaurant management and P&L breakdown by one of the best in Darden restaurants. Five, five, five different concepts, or three different concepts, five different times. My mentor Vicky, she was restaurant of the year. That's like 700 restaurants, five times.
Wow.
So I was lucky to have been gifted the ability to understand how to run a restaurant, at least, run a business, front, top to bottom, front to back, everything in between, food cost analysis,
Mhm.
how to write a menu, how to write the recipe, how to break it down, how to look where every penny is, a recipe roll up, all of that stuff, right? And so that's that business acumen that you have in the background. That's going to help you, especially in your business of what you're trying to do with coral, right? I mean, because in the future, um, it will be there. It might not temporarily be there, but again, it's like it's in hold, right? You'll see it. Everything always comes,
Yeah.
up, ebbs and flows, man, ups and downs.
Mhm.
It's like a wave, always working
Yep.
like that.
Yeah. It's, everything has its own intrinsic boom and bust cycles. And that's the really cool part. And like what you said, Perry, like, running a reef tank's not so much different than running any business, restaurant, finance, or anything like that. It's just spending the time and learning you know, what recipe, what a what a menu actually looks like in a reef tank. Like having the right things on the menu there, what clients you're going to be serving, right? What area you're going to
Mhm.
try and replicate. Um, all of that, it's all the same shit at the end of the day. I wouldn't doubt, like, a lot of these people are subject experts in their one specific field because they have a passion for it. And once you can apply it to a different realm, that's why they become valuable like that. I think I had um, a professor tell me back when I was at university. It's like, this stuff is really cool. It's not too much different than the stock market. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's really not. And I was at the time, before even going to university, I had no clue what I wanted to major in. I just picked the most interesting sounding one to me because I had no experience in it, and I figured it would be a cool skill to learn. But once I kind of saw that it was all just kind of one and the same, it's like, oh, nice. It's it's not that hard after all. Definitely struggled the first few semesters because it was a lot, especially going from like a public school around here, not going to like one of those like super fancy private schools or whatnot, and then being placed in that rigor. It was hard to adjust, I won't lie. But after I got, accustomed to it and I rebuilt myself, life became easy. The life became kind of stress-free, even though I was just bombarded by, deadlines and things that I had to accomplish in a short time frame. Because the one cool thing was that, not cool. Looking back at it, it was kind of cool, but like in the moment, not so cool. But like a semester was only 12 weeks instead of the 16 weeks. So you had to cram all that curriculum into that much shorter of a time frame. So like that speed and that cadence of things that you had to do, it's like, man, it is tiring. But, it taught you how to handle stress, it taught you how to manage yourself, it taught you, how to get all the important things in your life done and out of the way so that you could, focus on the auxiliary things that you wanted to, learn about or be passionate about, right? And that I think that was the most invaluable skill that I got, from going to college pretty much. That time management and that stress management capability. Otherwise, I mean, man, I would have probably just crumpled up first year. I just wasn't used to it back then. But now it's like, man, life is just kind of, more simple for me now. Like I try not to stress about a lot of things, even when I do get stressed. I try and manage it a lot better. Not out here pulling my hairs out. Um, so with that in mind, it's like you can really reef any way you want to. You can stress as much as you want to, but as long as you can, pivot, readjust yourself, and just kind of catch your breath, I think that's what's the most important.
Heck yeah. Mo's out there. What up, dude? Jaguar. And then to finish Jaguar's question, I'm gonna let you take it because I'm gonna run to the little girls' room. Um, so yeah, so in the next 5 years, what do I see? I see somehow Alan and I creating an um herbal reef keeping products that will be used for pest elimination as well as tinctures and things like that. I'm just throwing it out there, but no, for real, it's something that's on my mind is to develop my knowledge more into herbs and what herbs can be utilized from pest standpoints in the reef and ways to drive pests out of the reef. So that's something that I want to work on in the background. I have the herb knowledge, but Alan has the coral knowledge. So maybe together we could put something together. Alan, go ahead and take that question, bro. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, I'm not sure if Perry will hear this, but like, that to go in the same vein, like a lot of the coral dips are nothing more than just extracts of essential oils coming from different herbs, right? And different plants in that regard. But where I think the hobby is probably going to go in probably the next 5 years here, it's going to be, kind of that resurgence of the Reefers Code, having that community again. That's like the social aspect of it, building that community, having that tight knit network of people that you can trust or share your things with. But apart from that, like in terms of like the hobby or coral or husbandry advancements, I think um, I think it's going to be more people being able to spawn and grow corals in their tank, right? Because we're at that point where we can grow beautiful colonies, which is fine. But the ultimate goal of any organism is to spawn and reproduce and pass on its genetics to the next generation, right? And I think while a lot of the researchers out there, like Jamie Craig's, is doing wonderful work, and I've been fortunate enough to have a few conversations with him. Um, I think that's going to be the future of this hobby, where you can grow a coral, get it to a point where it spawns, and then you can be like, "Wow, this thing was born in my own house, and I've been able to raise successive generations of it." It's like clownfish or whatnot, and just like breeding those types of things. I think that will be really cool once we can fully close that circle. And like the guys over in like Germany are already starting to accomplish that now. I really want to be, at least, a large, a large proponent of that is at least in the U.S. here. I think we don't really have, um, at least on the hobbyist level, a lot of people out there spawning and growing corals from larvae to colony in the US. Um, really, I was really tempted to acquire one of those coral spawning systems that Jamie Craig's is selling. Or like, a lot of them go out to different institutions and reef restoration sites. But like, I was like, man, I'd love to have one of those things in my house. I would love to. It'd be so cool. I'm not sure if you caught any of that, Perry, while you went to the restroom, but, like what you were saying about herbs and tinctures, a lot of the dips we use, what are they? Essential oils derived from different plants, right? So, like, who's to say that we can't find one that could potentially work in system, or at least use like an organic remedy, right? That's not that doesn't have a lot of these like downstream side effects that we're going to be completely unaware of.
So the thing that where I'm at with it, and I don't mind sharing this, like really, dude, because honestly, I believe in love. I think it would probably be easiest form in a tincture, and it would be probably best to somehow get it into the form of a carbon source through a tincture. But you would probably need to choose the right type of carbon source. You know, and so it could get complex. So that's what I'm saying. Like you could, if you were trying to preserve, I guess, integrity, you know, without it getting out there, you could say that um, you could use it as a broad brush and say as a carbon source because there's so many different types of carbon sources that you could use, you know, proprietary wise that you could distinguish your product over another product. So that's why none of that stuff really bothers me. I think everybody should be out there trying to find their own ways of taking care of their animals, and you can do that by just number one having passion, number two love, and but through passion and love, and number three observation. You add those together, and you're capable of figuring out how to put 1,000 par over corals and not skip a beat and change the growth pattern of one of the hardest corals to keep. So yeah, anything's possible.
Yeah, like like going back to that your thought there, Perry. Like out there in the wild, a lot of these corals aren't faced with a lot of pest issues, right? And they're able to fight off, at least maintain those pests at a manageable level, so that the coral is still actively growing and it's not the pest isn't an active detriment to it, right? And where does that come from? It comes from the coral capturing all the other bioaccumulated, compounds from the things that it eats. To die. So, who's to say that this isn't a realm of possibility? Because I definitely think it is, right? Because like back in the day, or you know, even now out there in the ocean, a perfectly healthy colony is able to fight off flatworms, or it's able to fight off red bugs or white bugs or black bugs, things like that. They
Mhm.
never get to that crazy level where we might experience in a reef tank. One of my friends, he was just kind of perplexed because it turns out he had white bugs in his system. Yeah, his corals looked amazing. And typically, when you have those types of parasites, you witness shrunken polyps, degradation of color, abnormal growth, and whatnot. But in his tank, he was just like, "Yeah, man, I couldn't even tell. Things were just so healthy." I was like, "Wow, that's a testament to your own skill right there, man." Um, because you were able to keep such a fragile organism so
Mhm.
healthy that it was not actively dying, even though there was an antagonist in the system. So I mean, like, hands off to him, or like pat on his back. He deserves a medal because I could tell that he truly loved his stuff just from that statement alone, and just to be able to see his stuff alone, right? It's like you like you deserve it, because if you care that much and you're able to give that much love to the things in your care, where when they're actively facing detriment and they don't even display that. I mean, that's a testament of skill.
Yeah, I mean, I can only go on just observation, my own personal garden and what I'm seeing happening through a living food forest that is built on diversity, right? You talked about it earlier. You got your larger story, and you got an understory, and you got your ground, you got your shrubs, and then below that you got your ground, and then you got your ground cover. and you got all these stages, right? And then everything's sort of in this like symphony, in this like relationship. And yeah, I mean it's all I'm losing my point. It's all working in that same system.
Oh, yeah. Wait, let me, I guess I have one of these pic
What's
to
that?
change the background. You see how the fox flame looked like probably a few months ago?
Mhm.
And then this, you see how much more vibrant
Mhm.
and healthy it is now since I've implemented all the changes in my system? I mean, it's just crazy to see. And like, it's hard to see, day to day, but when you're able to, reflect back on these photos in your own journal, yeah, it's just awesome. Because like you can see how much the yellow drives down the axial tip, right?
Mhm.
And though it's still actively
Yeah,
growing
okay,
here,
I see. Yeah.
but you see
It's
how
way
much.
more definitive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see how it's just kind of bleeding from the saturation point, and it's just now it's got way more yellow, and it's not bleeding as much. Like really, yeah. Look how deeper it's going into the branches, into the base of the coral. So the yellow is becoming more dominant as a color, which is pretty cool. Um, Wow, that's incredible looking. And you also on the inner part of your axial core lights looks like you're getting a little purple in there or something like or the polyps or something. There's definitely an interesting color variant going on in there. So that's cool too.
Yeah, and that's a picture of the same colony too, just at a different state in a different time of its
Yeah,
life. A different
incredible, man.
different strategies of husbandry. So I mean, you're seeing similar changes in terms of the coral's physiology. So I mean, here's the fox flame, for example. Earlier we looked at the jaw dropper, and then before I have examples of the pink lemonade, right? And so it's across so many different species of coral, across so many different locales of where these things originate from. You're seeing a very generalized end state, right? Improvements in health, vibrance, uh, robustness. All of those things are going hand in hand here with the nutrition, the energy acquisition of the organism, and just how you maintain the system by understanding where you currently exist, right? Because like what I was saying earlier with the analogy of the different drivers in different cars, you sure, you give that the F1 driver like a slow ass little like Camry or something, or like a small tiny slow car, and then you put him back in the race car, and it's gonna be two completely different things, That race car driver is gonna know how to handle that slow moving car a lot better than the slow, everyday driver getting thrown in the race car, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely. Yeah, and I remember where I got stuck earlier, Alan, was you were talking about you were talking about the way the coral is the response and stress response and how the white bugs were essentially living with no harm. And it got me thinking about the food forest and the diversity of the food forest and how it welcomes in all of these other animals. So not only when you diversify like all your plants, you're getting like predatory wasps or all of these different also different plants that are sending out different terpenes and everything else that are like for example rosemary or mint or some of these things certain mites and things don't want to go near certain plants because they just are off put by whatever is being produced by that particular herb, right?
Hmm.
And that's why co-planting can become so like such a good strategy because you're essentially giving protection to other plants that are in the vicinity through the root sharing as well as just the diversity that's being created. So perhaps the white bugs were able to sustain because there was something that was picking on their population and keeping it relatively at bay, sort of in the same mindset of having a diverse system, a system that's got a wide array of microorganisms may offer something that's going to compete for that particular pest.
Talking about welcoming other organisms, my dog just walked in.
I love your fluffy dog, dude.
Uh, he's a good boy. But yeah, I mean, I 100% in that lane of thinking and trying to figure that in my own right. It's that's where the fun is, trying to see what exists out there and what I was saying earlier. How do you apply it in this box, which is completely, you know, against nature, basically.
Well, I'm at the point where I make my own toothpaste. I make my own almost all my own essential care products. Um, I don't really have a need to leave anymore. I'm at the point where I'm almost able to everything that I need, I can either make myself or bug spray. I'll just go and take beauty berry and I'll soak it in some RO water and let it soak for a few days, and then I'll just spritz it on me as I'm working out in the garden, and it'll drive mosquitoes bonkers. They don't want to come near you. Toothpaste, I make my own through coconut oil, turmeric, cloves and clove oil, and baking soda, borax, and you can actually heal bone. Yeah, you literally recreate an animal by using this recipe. So, I mean, there's so much to learn, and like gaining your ability to make your own food source for your corals, for example, like the concoction. It's nice that in that creative mindset that you were able to provide your reef with a solution. Um, and yeah, that's so killer that that you were able to create the concoction to fit a niche need for specifically for the reef. Now I don't know if it's something that at this point, because of your feeding strategy, if it's needed or not. I really don't know, but it sounds like you're timing your feeding based off of the waste of the fish, right? I mean, is that how I'm understanding it?
It's still a core proponent or component in my
Are
strategy
you
because
broadcasting it with, like, your food? So, like, when you feed the reef, are you
Mhm,
feeding concoction plus your food, your frozen, and you're just
everything,
feeding
yeah.
a big freaking,
It's like
big old plate of whatever, and there it goes,
yeah,
chum.
yeah. Essentially, I'm chumming the water for 4 hours straight, or as long as the fish can eat, or the system can eat, because the corals can be in this extended feeding mode basically, and these acroporos, like sometimes the filaments will be out for hours. And that's the really crazy thing because they'll keep on sending them out there as long as there's food. They can eat kind of indefinitely, right? And like I said earlier, as long as there's enough oxygen for them to respire and actually use the energy that they've captured, they can do it. I mean, you think about a coral, it could be as big as a golf ball or it could be as big as a football field, right?
There's
And it's
no
just
limit.
there's no limit. So with that, you know, um, with that lens in mind, you could be like, okay, I just got to find the way to turn this golf ball into a football field, and that's it. Uh, I mean, it's not exactly like humans because we have we stop growing at a certain point. But an acropora colony or something like one of those large like colonial corals, it's indefinite potentially, right? It's just going to grow another polyp. It's going to make more skeleton. It's just going to keep on expanding and conquering its space, and that's it. Um, but yeah, like the concoctions have definitely been something that I use, and I've definitely been able to see it at play across different systems that I have in operation, and just from other people's notes from it too. It's like within a month, people are saying, "Oh, I'm starting to see my stuff grow. I'm starting to see colors that I didn't see before." And well, you're meeting the nutritional needs of the organism itself, so of course, I can display it it can display a better version of itself now, right? Because it has everything or more. It has more of what it needs, right? And the reason that I made it in the first place is because eventually you can't add any more fish, right? And you can only
Mhm.
feed those fish so much. So you have to start targeting the organism that is in
So
most
how
need
much
of
are
it.
you using? Are you seeing like that you need to up your portion sizes as well?
For sure. Yeah. Like now I'm at like 2 to 3 grams per day.
So
And
so now you're at your 43 grams of food, frozen, and now 2 more grams of
oh
yeah, the 2 grams of concoction is that is like super. Like, that's a lot more than 2 grams. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like in
yeah. I mean
terms of nutrition.
it's
So
way
yeah,
more it's way more
I'm
condensed
just
than the
wrapping my
frozen.
mind around how much freaking nutrients are going into this system at once. Most people would have a panic attack to be putting that much nutrition into their system at one swoop.
Yeah, like I mean, like once everything is like defrosted and mixed or something, like I have a measuring cup that I use to feed, and every day I track how much I'm feeding and and I observe the tank. It's like you get your normal like baking cup or something. It's like it's got the graduations of how many milliliters or something. So I fill that thing up to like 150, 200 mLs of food defrosted across all the systems. There's no water added. That's just food, right? So like that amount once it melts down, it kind of saturates and mixes with everything, and you're like, all right, I'm just chumming the water basically. The tank turns like cloud or not cloudy, but like it's filled with particulates, food, and those things. And the corals just open up, the fish go crazy, all the inverts come out of their hidey holes, and then you see just so much more life in the system in general. It just, like I said, it's a compounding effect, and because we are human, we can kind of let it get out of our own control, right?
Like something you could think about too. Like, not that you need to do this, but I'm telling you, like looping your waste back in. Actually, I was doing that, and I wasn't seeing anything but a positive response. I just man, I decided to abort it because I just didn't want to try to keep up with it. Like I really didn't want to keep up with what I was my plan because I was trying to create like an SOP for how am I going to manage this cup. At what point have I? At what point have I exhausted or have I drenched as much nutrition out of this skim as I possibly can? Like what point have you wrung it all the way out? I don't know. And would you ever? I don't think you would. So, but that was my process of my mind of trying to create an SOP of like how would I clean or how would I maintain, those kind of things. And I just thought about it. I'm like, well, in the end of the day, I was talking to my buddy Matt, and I'm like, and I'm just gonna fucking run it dry. I'm gonna run my skimmer dry and just
Yeah.
be done with it and leave more shit in the tank. And instead
Hmm.
of pulling it out, letting it get pulled out, I'll just tune my skimmer to a little bit more dry and be done with it. But it was a cool way of taking and stretching your nutrients and redispensing your nutrients back into your system to keep your acros sort of engaged. And that was what I was noticing. What it did is it kept them engaged, constantly engaged. The
Yeah.
feeding response. Now, whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, it didn't hurt. It doesn't appear to have helped all that much, but no harm, no foul is where I left it on that. But it is doable. That's the good news. It is capable of being done.
Yeah, it
So.
was more so like like I like to say, like it's like a proof of concept, right? I mean, if you can prove your hypothesis in a different manner, then you're most likely correct in some vein, right? To begin with. I mean, yeah, I mean, when you were kind of rattling that off, I was like, man, that's a lot of work, Perry. I was just thinking I'd skim dryer, but it's nice to hear that you concluded there as well.
I mean, I honestly did. I probably will revisit it at some point when I feel like my tank is at more of like in its mid 20s or its later 20s, maybe entering into its 30s. And it really wants to go and wants to go hard. And the algae is like sort of found its way. But I was wrapping my mind into this idea. I was thinking like, well, if I'm feeding phosphate via algae that's been broken down in the tank, maybe I'm like literally feeding my acros algae. And that's kind of like I was like, will that then help them to outcompete the algae faster for the nutrients in the tank? And so it's where my mind was going to a good place with it. It's just the practicality of it and where I'm at in the life cycle stages of the reef right now. It's unnecessary. I'm still
Yeah.
in the immature stage. I'm fighting more trying to keep nutrients down than trying to bring them up at this stage, right? I'm trying to keep things from getting out of control algae wise. So I haven't found that tipping point where the coral mass has finally levied over right over the algae. But at some point, that scale, that tipping point is it's gonna go, and when it does, that's about the time when I'm gonna revisit maybe looping skimmate back into the system. I was up to 24 milliliters a day of skim every 2 milliliters every hour, or 1 milliliter every hour is what I landed on this reef. Um, no harm, no foul, nothing.
Yeah. I mean, you break it down, you're just putting liquid fertilizer back in your tank. It's not much different than what I throw into my garden. I just
What's
take the
also
skim it.
your
Yeah.
bacteria too. There's like all of that's going back into the system. So it's almost like looping a bacteria source into your system too. Because you've got all that decaying and then you're feeding it to your acros. So that was also my anecdotal theory was the protein skimmer that's pulling the bacteria prematurely from the system. It would be a way of getting it back into the system so that it could feed the coral, since it might have been prematurely pulled out of the system before the coral had a chance to yank it. That was where my mind was going with it.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I mean, yeah, I've had times where the skimmer just overflowed back into the tank. I mean, things were fine. Like a whole week's worth of skimmate collected, just
Mhm.
dumped back in. I'm like, you know, maybe like 10 years ago or something when I was just starting off, I'd freak out. But now it's just more so like a minor inconvenience. Just wipe it off and get on with my day. You know, nothing's gonna happen.
No, you're all you're gonna see is you're gonna look at the Aqua Wiz and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's that day. That's that day. And you're gonna be
Yeah,
like, man, why is my pH? Why all of a sudden did my pH just totally fucking plummet?
yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's
that's right. I dumped the whole entire skimmer.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I see that when I feed the tank really heavily, or like I earlier on, like probably like a month or two ago, I was like, there was like this one anomaly in the pH trend, and I was like, huh, what happened? Like you said, it just dropped. I was like, whoa, I thought my tank died. I was at work. I called my old man. He's like, yo, go home and check the tank. He's like, oh, the skimmer just overflowed. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what it translates to in the data and the trend. And I was like, okay, cool. I mean, nothing
Yeah.
happened, but like what I was saying earlier, there's a certain time in the day or within the life cycle of the tank in general where you want to be in that growth phase, that respirating phase, whatever phase you want to kind of translate into, depending on what you want. Like right now, I'm at get the pH up so that I can sustain a lot of growth in the short term. But once these things hit, you know, baseball size and larger, I kind of want to slow things down because, like, in the system right now, there's probably like 100 or so different SPF or acropora. And, I can only have so many baseballs in a 100,
Well,
150
you
gallon
you
tank.
you may benefit through some of the anecdotal observations I've made regarding nature and sun and circadia rhythms and
Oh
patterns
yeah.
and how to
Uh,
incorporate a circadian like type schedule into your reef. It when you get to the point of where you want to be, but, like you know,
go.
you there?
I'm back.
Okay.
You
You
there?
may want to
All
have
right.
that display that is that mature like display that you don't cut out of or mess with that much so that you could do this like thing where you mirror the life cycles and the stages and you have your annual time of year where it's kind of like running your garden. You know that in the spring it's the best time to make your cuts for all your corals and you regenerate them. So, your strategy of your big propagation event you may decide comes in the spring or in the fall or whenever, based on wherever you're at in that light cycle of that system. Because, if you're following, sort of that schedule and that pattern, right? And the up and down sun, then I think it parlays into it. I'm putting my battery on charge. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think it plays into it, man. And then you get to this point where you're like, okay, well, man, I'm ready to just enjoy this system for what it's worth. And maybe if I just apply a different strategy now, I hit a more balanced cruise control strategy versus a rock and roll strategy.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just
It's
my thought.
for sure. I think you're 100% right, Perry. Like one of my systems, I play it the long, slow game, and then the other system, I'm playing it rough and fast. So I want to see what it looks like. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just fortunate enough to have the systems in which I'm willing to experiment and trial and error this stuff out. But like as long as you can be a master of both of those realms, like who's stopping you from transitioning from one state to the other and knowing how to run it at that state too, right?
Well,
So
it happens in nature. So, like, if you go to the ocean where their origin waters, like what you've done and how you're recreating your par and you're getting your par to really what 2 feet of water looks like under midday sun, and you're able to recreate that, you're that's where the sun is at that particular period of the year. But at some point, you're going to go into monsoon, and as you go into monsoon, you're going to be going to days where not only is the salinity changing constantly because it's raining so much, but you're also seeing changes in cloud coverage and your total par, right? And so
mhm.
that shift happens naturally in the origin waters, and that's like that circadia thing that I was talking about, where I believe there's a little bit more to it. I mean, I'm just updating my photo period. That's my only interplay with it right now. But I think there's more to following the sun. And, if you're at a place where you're just hobbyist guy, you just want to sit back and you're not trying to frag and make money on corals and having an extra tank and doing all of this, but you're just like a guy like me, then for me, like circadia reefing is perfect because I don't have the stress. I just match where the
Yeah.
life cycle is of where the sun is at this time of year. I try to look at my tank and say, okay, well, it's about to start peaking. So, I got to start looking at nutrition and building my nutrition up, slowly building my fish pop, getting it ready because, as the light cycle gets longer and longer and longer, the corals are going to have more demand. Therefore, we're moving to the summer, and it's kind of the same thing if you think about
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Just like before, right? We were in the midst of winter. Where'd the mosquitoes go? They weren't around. Now we're rolling into spring, summer season. They pop out. It's just that different form of energy capture. They're also like different forms of batteries too, right? They're out here harnessing energy from, in this case, sucking on our blood, which is kind of annoying. But they didn't exist when the energy in the environment was lower, or they couldn't exist, right? It's the same for our reef tank. Who's to say it's not? Um, so yeah, and I would definitely say like the one system where I'm not pushing the light. I'm not really pushing the pH like I am. It's way less stressful. So like yeah, to go on your point, like yeah, circadian rhythm, circadian reefing is it's way less stressful than the way that I'm running my experiment tank. Cause I gotta be there. Like I said earlier, if I miss a day of feeding, that pH climbs to like 8.8, 8.9. Well, it's not gonna be there yet, but like it could. I don't know what's the heck's gonna happen. I could lose stuff due to like reckless wanting essentially, right? And you have to be there to
I
implement
think
those
you're keen
controls.
enough to see the deleterious signs that are showing before that happens. Because and that's that part with observation where it can't really be taught. You just have to sit down and just stare and just find a way to figure it out by using your brain and using your eyes, your ears, your senses, and just trying to wrap your mind around it. And I think that we could learn a lot more, even about our own reefs, just by spending more time with them, and and looking at the corals from the top down every day. I think you would find it probably well in advance, but the signs would start showing that things are getting dangerously high. But based on what I'm seeing, I don't think you've gotten even close to that ceiling. Um,
Yeah, like I'm sure I could push it a few more, tenths of a point up there without inducing a lot of those issues. But like I said, I haven't been there before yet, so I can't say. I don't know until I'm there, right?
yeah,
But
I mean, it
yeah.
just would be interesting to see, like, if we were able to have like a coral flat, like under natural light, like real, like under major like daylight, but have like a greenhouse type. That's my dream, is to have like an open greenhouse coral farm, like that type of thing. I know Chris Meckley does like sort of a similar type thing over in Plant City, not far from here. But but yeah, man, it's really, the sky is the limit. If you spend the time and you observe and you understand what's going on. I think that it opens your mind up uh, to possibly understand things that sometimes just can't be taught. And even if they could be taught, they might not be applicable to your system. And when we talk about
Yeah.
climates, and I kind of wanted to get into this, is we were talking about opening doors and all of these things. I'm a health nut, that, but I grow plants right next to the reef tank. But the French doors that lead out into my garden are open almost all day long, and I do that so my dogs are able to freely go in and out of the house as they wish. Um, I'm here for the most part. So while I'm here, I leave the door open, I should say.
Hmm.
But the air exchange is there. But I also do draft air regardless through my home at all times. Like, I always am pulling from one part of the home and drafting from another part, especially if the weather allows for it, right? But as it relates to the pH, and you're creating a climate, a microclimate. Now, within a microclimate, I've designed another climate, and then my food forest becomes another climate. And as I continue to build my food forest, I'm interested to see how that's going to parlay into the performance of my pH exchange, because now my air in and around my home that's coming in and out of my home is being influenced in its own microclimate, because now my CO2 is getting yanked by the canopy of oaks in the backyard. They're loving all of this, whatever this reef tank is able to give, whatever anything is able to give. It's taking, it wants it, and it's delivering pure, rich oxygen at the same time. And so I just wonder, when we're talking about climates within microclimates, what I'm doing here, it would be really hard for you to be doing there. And I think that that's that whole dichotomy of right and wrong, where we need to really get away from this is the right it's what is the right solution for your environment, your microclimate, and what are you doing to enhance that microclimate? And are you doing anything to work around that climate and to enhance
Mhm.
and stabilize that climate? And are you doing anything around that climate to enhance and stabilize that climate? And I know that that sounds like a lot of climates, but you get where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like a universe within a
100%.
universe within a universe within a universe, right? When does it ever stop?
Mhm.
So,
Oh, yeah. It's like when we thought atoms were the smallest thing, right? But that's not true now anymore either. You get into subatomic physics and you're like, "Yeah, there's more than that."
yeah, so that,
You
that's the point where I can drink as much Coca-Cola tea as I want, and I probably won't be able to keep up. But no, I'm just being silly. But I for the audience, I was telling Alan that I'm going to be sending him a care package of some of the one of the best herbs on the planet, go to cola, because I would love to see his ability to study and his ability to observe and everything on something that's given him 100% clarity.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So I just took a look at my recent trend on the Aqua Wiz here. So on the 11th, the peak pH was 8.71.
Uh-huh.
On the 12th, it's at 8.72,
Hmm.
and today we're at 8.74.
Wow.
So,
It's telling a story, isn't it?
oh yeah, and I mean you just you go back more and more in time here. Like let's see, on the 7th it was 8.63. So from about a week it rose a 10, like point 10. Yeah, a tenth of a point over the course of a week here, and you just start thinking about this. It's like I said earlier, it's a compounding effect that you're just going to see over time as the corals grow more, and things like that. It's actually about time that I start feeding soon. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, you
once we
need
ha-
to go. Yeah,
once
if
we
you need to go ahead and bust out, that's totally cool. I appreciate your time as always. But
oh yeah,
yeah,
I mean, it was. Yeah, I got a few more minutes here, but it was just about that time. Alan, just want to make sure yeah, they are calibrated. I calibrate them every
but doesn't
month.
the Aqua Wiz do it differently, doesn't it?
The AquaWiz it uses the pH probe to measure the alkalinity, but the pH probe itself also needs calibration in order to read accurately.
Ah,
Right. So I mean, yeah, I do my routine maintenance on the AquaWiz itself, just so that I can rely on it as my source of truth here. But I can also see it within the coral, right? If my pH wasn't going
right.
up, I wouldn't be seeing them grow the way.
You're
Uh,
seeing what's happening is you're on a slope. You're
mhm.
on a on an upward trend, and you're just continuing to go and go and go and go, and you can see it incrementally shifting. And
Yeah.
I understand the calibration part. I do, but I think probably if there was a calibration error, maybe we wouldn't be seeing such a trend that looks very predictable. It's almost like you already know where you're going to be in a week.
Mhm.
You can almost do the
Right.
calculations for yourself, and you can figure out exactly where you're going to 8.78 by next Tuesday, for example.
Yeah.
If it keeps going like it's going, that's what you could be realistically looking at.
Right. And like also the corals tell the story themselves, you know. It like to see the
Hmm.
way like the corals in the system are behaving and growing, it's like it's night and day. Like I didn't have this type of growth or physiology a year or two ago. I had the same issue before. Tank was doing well. If obviously by off by point two, I not big deal. But yeah, yeah. I mean, either way, it's the thing is like it only reaches this value at the end of the peak photo period. So right now, the lights are 12. What is it? From 7 to 7 p.m. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is when I am running everything at 100%. So I always check what my value is at 7 p.m., right? Because the way that I run my tank, I should be observing the peak of that value at that time, right? So either why did the growth how often sorry, just looking at these questions here. With this growth in pH increasing, how often do you have to up your alkalinity calcium? Um, well, that question is, let's see here.
Well, I aren't we,
So
weren't we at one point your alkalinity was actually just buffering it. I mean, at one point, right? I mean, like your calcium, it's not there's like little drift in it as well, and it was showing that typically, yeah, I think your alkalinity was going up it during PM, wasn't it, or
so the
something? There was
alkaline
something
is
that was showing like an anomaly that was really
so
interesting.
yeah, so another interesting thing about the alkalinity here, since I started this experiment, I've noticed the peak value of the alkalinity is shifting earlier in the day, right? Because with the calcium reactor, you're always going to be inputting a constant rate, right? You're putting a constant value of minerals into the tank through its effluent as long as it's steady, right? So what I noticed now compared to before is that the peak value is earlier in the day, meaning that the apex of calcification or the peak rate of calcification is happening earlier as the corals are adapting to this light schedule and also because they're receiving the adequate amounts of nutrients and not nutrients but nutrition to adequately calcify,
Mhm.
right? Because before, like, I would notice my alkalinity peak around like 4 or 5 p.m. But now the greatest value of the day shifted is like around like instead of like 4 or 5, now it's at like what is it here? 1. So the corals begin growing faster earlier. So that was really cool too, to observe within this data
You're training
because
your
the
corals.
yeah, you're training them at the gym.
You're
That's it.
training your corals. You're training your whole entire ecosystem because like when you get into plant and botany and you start talking about quorum sensing, that's a microbial a microbial communication network that happens. I mean, it's a little bit more detailed than that, but it's a predictability built into microbiology in the actual microbiome that builds this awareness where plants are aware of their surroundings and can anticipate what's going to happen with pH, all these shifts that are going to happen in the soil before they even happen, and
Mm,
it's all relevant to that. So to me, if we take some of the ideas behind the microbiology, the rhizosphere, the we get into the fungal network, and we try to bring that into the reef, and the concepts and ideas into the reef, that intelligence into the reef. I don't think there's any reason to think that there's not something similar going on there, and it almost looks like your data sets are showing intelligence building on a microbial level, almost like predictability of what is going to happen next in your reef.
yeah, 100%. So Yazin asked a interesting question here. What do you think about keeping your cage at around 7.7? I asserted better coral health around that for some reason, definitely better polyp extension. So that's something in relation to the nutrition, right? Because KH is essentially a measure of the bicarbonate and carbonate ratios in the system. And like what I was saying earlier, if you're forcing the calcification, right, the coral is going to have to exert more energy trying to do one specific action, right? When it gets everything that it needs, your alkalinity can be whatever it wants. It's just a frame of reference, essentially. Because, like I said earlier, or probably one of our other talks, Perry, like I had alkalinity at 20 DKH, no problem. Didn't lose a single thing. So it doesn't matter. It's just your your point of reference. That's it. So I like to typically keep my alkalinity around 10 because it at least provides me something easily maintainable for myself, right? Because I went on vacation like towards the end of February, and while I was gone, the solenoid in my reactor failed off, right? So no CO2 was getting into the calcium reactor, and it dropped like 3 dkh in a day. So when I
Yeah,
got
so
back,
you were at 7, you just went to 4. You
yeah.
just
So
lost everything
and
because that's too low.
and that's and that's with the calcium reactor is still saturated, right? Because it's melted all the minerals, and that mineral rich solution is still within the vessel itself. So it was still dosing for a while until fresh water came through, right? And it started raising the pH within the calcium reactor. So it wasn't like I went cold turkey. If I went cold turkey, it probably dropped even harder, you
Yeah,
know,
like if you were using, like
like
an
two
A and
part.
B formula.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, that's where, where Kalkwasser could be good. Like, where it could be there as a life support system if there was another fail.
Right,
Um,
right. So
you
I'm
you
I'm gonna
know,
be hooking up a dosing pump so that I don't run the calcium reactor as hard, or at least have some type of secondary support solution out there. But this other question is, you know, are you noticing brittle skeletons? Heck no.
no,
You
come
know
on, that
why?
doesn't make sense. If you think about bone structure and you think about the body and you think about, you think about the skeletal anatomy of a human. If you take human A that is on an alkaline diet and human B who's on an acidic diet and put them next to each other, which one do you think is going to have a better, stronger skeletal structure?
Right. It's also going back to the nutrition, right? Because what we were saying earlier, you're forcing the coral to grow at a faster rate on your own time, at a faster time scale, right? But when you give it everything to grow and you scale it up, so imagine you're moving as a scalar, right? And not just multiple vectors, and you choose one vector to go in reality, what I'm doing is I'm expanding in all directions, in all different vectors at once. And I'm not just picking one direction and going into it, because that's when you run into issues, right?
Mhm.
It's like when you use Ozempic or something like that, right?
Mhm.
I'm choosing to lose weight, and because I want to lose all this weight, I'm going to lose all my bone mass and everything else like that. But when I choose to lose weight by exercising and working out, not only am I losing the weight, I'm building mass and becoming more dense. My body is becoming denser. My bones are becoming stronger. I'm building more muscle. And that's what the coral is. And you have to keep the nutrition in relation to that, in the same
Of
picture,
course, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because when these people say that's the issue with a lot of these papers, right? A lot of the literature. They pick one variable and they explore one variable.
Right.
But when we run a reef tank, we do everything. We don't just say, I want one thing. I want everything. It's
You know
completely
what the
different.
answer is to that, Alan? Is
Mhm.
if you take that lab, and here's the only reason I'm gonna try to be cool about this. If you take the lab and the lab person running the lab, and they tell you that they did a lab experiment and this is sound advice and this is the way it is. This is the
No.
law. This is the law of the land. This is the rule because I did an experiment. I did a test and it was in a lab. And I would say, okay, cool. Can I go open the doors of the lab and allow some fresh air to come in? And can we just allow it to rain in here for a little bit? And let's see if we still get the same thing. Nature always has a way to disprove
Mhm.
anything you think you know. Right when you think you know something, nature has a clever way of saying, you don't know shit, bro. You don't know anything. And that's what I love about nature. And that's why I'm so addicted to nature. And that's why I've said, I would rather serve it because if I serve it and I steward it, I can
Yeah.
take all the other bullshit out of it. All I got to
Mhm.
do is just, it's saying it needs something. I'm here for you, bro. I got you. Do you need alkalinity? I'll give you some alkalinity, no problem. You need some calcium? Gotcha. You need me to scrub you down today and make you look nice and shiny? I got you. You know, and I think it's that mindset shift of changing the mindset and looking at it from that perspective, you know, and that for me seems to work. I don't know what your thoughts are, but
I mean, shit. I think you know what my thoughts are, Perry. Yeah, 100% with you. It's just how I've been rolling the past few years here, and it's been way easier for me. It's been way better for the reef. And I see it. Like, you can go on the my reef to reef thread too. It's like I've always been a big proponent of keeping it simple, but now I'm trying to understand why simple is better, right? Because it's easy to say simple, do simple, but
Mhm.
then people screw up being simple.
They do. Yeah.
You have to understand what simple really means, because simple is more complex than anything. Because you have to understand all these nuances. Because I can just tell someone to get a calcium reactor and a protein skimmer and run your tank simple and cheap. You can still screw it up. You start your calcium reactor at the wrong pH and you dose too much of it. What happens? You acidify the tank, nothing grows. Well, that's not what I did. But then people see it and they apply it the wrong way, and that's what they get, right? You have to understand how to use the tool, when to use the tool, and why the tool is working. And apart from that, the only way you can get experience is through hands-on. You can only, like you said, you can only read the paper so many times, and so many other papers disprove this paper. So it's not really about, the guy in the lab coat telling you what to do. It's about your own experience, your own observations, your own conclusions from reading hundreds and hundreds of papers, hours and hours of research, and then applying it and seeing what the true reality is. And that's the
That's
only way.
the
Yeah.
difference though, Alan. Here's why I respect you being science minded so much more, because you got the science, you got the data, but you got your hands in the water. That is where respect comes. That's where true respect is earned by me. And that's why you're going to be successful, because you're a steward. You've gotten the idea that when you realize that the reef is bigger than you, the reef has always been bigger than you, and it will always be bigger than you. And when you can look at it like that and you can say, you know what? I'm small in comparison. That's why I'm here to serve this thing. And you know, I love pulling weeds. Really, I love pulling weeds. You want to know why I love pulling weeds? Because I know that every time I'm pulling weeds in my garden, I just know it's just one step closer, that maybe I get one more peach, one more plum, one more something. But I know that the fruit is going to be better. I know that the overall thing is, so the time, the energy of putting into it and serving it is what is going to bring the fruit forward. The fruit comes, right? The colorful acroporas, that's being the fruit here. Those colorful acroporas come through you being a good steward to your reef. Um, I believe, and when you look at all of the people that have stopped in on this channel that I've had the good fortune to talk with and share time and energy with in space, one common denominator seems to ring through and through and through, regardless of their approach, regardless of what their message is, regardless of any of that noise. They care for their reef like they're caring for your dog right there, straight up.
Yeah, he's off
You
screen right
know,
now. But yeah, I mean, it's just being passionate. That's
that's
it.
it. That's why you're doing such great work, and I'm so privileged to share time and space with you and be able to look at your data and hear it firsthand, and what your ideas are firsthand. It's something I value and I appreciate, and hopefully we'll continue to do more of this stuff. I want to let you go feed your reef, man. It's a
Yeah, I
beautiful
gotta feed
day. I
myself
mean,
too. Yeah,
yeah,
like,
absolutely.
the fun thing is that now that I can see all the benefits of fasting, not just in my own body, but like I see it in the reef tank.
Have
So
you
why
done it
not?
yourself, like for your own
Yeah,
body?
I don't eat until I feed the tank.
Oh, are you still doing that?
Yeah.
Are you on a one meal a day type thing, or do you open it up for longer, or because I
Not,
mean, when you're
not
younger, if you're using time restricted feeding or intermittent fasting, you don't need as much downtime. I mean, unless you're doing it for physiological improvement or possibly you're trying to mediate precancer or anything like that, which you can, of course, do through fasting. Um,
no, yeah, like I mean, a lot of that stuff is just early prevention, essentially, right? The earlier you can get on these healthy habits, it's better for you. But yeah, more so like I have a little bit less time now. I can't because like most of my nights I'm either at the gym or I'm at the coral. So the past few months I've been just dedicated to looking at the coral. So I had to change my lifestyle a little bit.
Me too.
My body isn't demanding all those extra calories so much. I really want to build my understanding about the reef right now. So because I'm not working out at the gym as often, I still want to keep a healthy weight, a healthy fat muscle
Well, look
bone
at where
density
you're at with the
ratio.
sun angle. Look at where you're at, with the winter. You're coming out of the winter. I'm doing the same thing. I no longer fight the I gotta look a certain way thing, or I gotta be a certain weight thing, or I look at it, where am I at? Right now it's the spring here, right? It's getting into the spring. That means we're on this, right? Like your tank, we're on this trajectory right now. And so what does that mean? It means the sun's out more sunlight, more energy, more sunlight on the body.
Hmm.
Metabolism begins to lift because the vitamin D count and melanin's coming in, pineal glands
Hmm.
firing. Things are starting to come out of dormancy of winter thinking, winter mindset. Right, winter
Hmm.
mindset is all you're in. You've been inside, you've been working on inside projects, and now it's going to shift slightly. And
Yeah.
your understanding is understanding that where you are is congruent with exactly where we are seasonality wise. And
Yeah.
if you think of it this way, you don't have to fight yourself over these things. I don't anymore anyway. I just look at it, I'm
Mm.
like, okay, well, the spring's coming. All right, so I know that I'm gonna start losing some weight. I'm gonna want to bike every day. I'm gonna want to be working every day, and it's exactly what's happening. And every
Yeah.
year it's become the same thing since I've started this journey. It's almost predictable. I'll eat shitty in the winter. I'll eat more sugar. My mom makes some of the bakes better than anybody I know. So like I get a lot of good baked stuff during the winter time, and I put on a few pounds. And as soon as the doldrums, and the winter doldrums start fading off, then my energy, my mind starts rising, and you just start rising to it, and you'll be back in the gym. You'll be back to it in no time. It's just a part of the life cycle.
Yeah. I mean, we've been forced to stay indoors more. I can't go on my nature walks as much, things like that. So why not spend more time observing the nature in my house, right? And trying to get a better
Yeah.
understanding of that and what I can do down the road,
So are
because
you going to
this
go to
is about,
Reefapalooza?
yeah, I'll be in Florida.
Okay. Yeah, well, we're gonna have to hook up for sure. If you have time to break away for a little while and want to stop by, I'd love to have you over. To check out the really the reef, but the food forest too. But
That'd be awesome.
and you're welcome. You're welcome to stop by, dude. I mean, anytime. Like, my kid is moving out, Cindy's son, I like adopted him when she passed, and he turned 20 this year. And so, yeah, he's moving with his girlfriend to Connecticut.
Oh, wow, that's
So
all the
I
way up
now
north.
don't, speaking of pH, I don't know what to do now. Like, I'm like, all right, so I'm like, what room am I going to hang out in right now? What am I doing today? Like, it's empty, it's quiet, and I love it, man. I'm here for it. You can hear a pin drop anywhere in the house, and I love it. Not that I don't love him being here. I'm excited for him to move on, but my daughter, she's 27, 28 this year. She just turned 28. So, you know, it happens fast, man. But yeah, I'm at a point
Yeah.
where when Reefapalooza comes along, he'll be long gone, and hopefully I'll have done some work inside my house to get rid of some furniture and do some shit that I want to get done around here. So, but we'll definitely be hooking up. I want to go out there and visit with a few people. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'll be excited, man. If I can make break out for my friends over there, I'd love to stop by and kind of chill. Be fun.
yeah, I'm thinking maybe I'll try to organize like something where if maybe like some of the guys that are going, I don't know if Reef Beef or any of those guys are going, but if any of those guys might want to like all jump in a van or whatever and come out here and like throw a little afternoon thing. I don't know. I'm trying to put something together in my mind, so I'll keep you in tune, and maybe I can do like a side party type thing to Reefapalooza. We'll see.
Yeah,
Well, bro,
I'm
you
looking
get at
forward
it,
to it.
man. Congratulations on that jaw dropper. It is truly one of my favorite corals, but to see what you've done with it is uh yeah, you already know. You
Yeah,
already
it's
know,
been
bro.
jaw dropping. Pun
It's
intended
you're
there.
making the coral like literally live up to its name. So congratulations, man.
Yep. Yeah, it's been fun. Well, who knows, man? Next time we speak, there might be even more fun stuff to talk about. So we'll see.
Ah, I like planting seeds. All right, sounds good, dude. I appreciate your time. Be well, my
All
friend.
right.
All
You
right,
too,
much
Perry.
love.
Have a good night.
All right,
See ya.
see you, bud.